Of the Southampton Town Board to order on this 28th day of November, 2023. Please rise if you're able and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's remain standing and join together in a brief moment of silence. First, today we laid to rest Rosalind Carter, former First Lady, married to President Jimmy Carter. So we remember her, but also we like to keep in our thoughts and prayers all the men and women of our armed services who bravely defend our freedoms at home and abroad each day. So with them in mind and the memory of Rosalind Carter, let's join together in silence. Thank you. Please be seated. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Councilwoman McNamara? Present. Councilman Martell?
Present.
Supervisor Schneiderman?
Present.
Councilman Bouvier is not with us.
He's
and
not here this evening.
Councilman Schiavone?
Present.
Okay. So let's get started. There are some walk-on resolutions I'd like to add to the packet, if we may. Let me know if you don't want to do this all as one. This will require all of us affirmatively to vote. 44910 authorizes the supervisor to execute a no-cost extension of term of contract for the Riverside Sewer District Professional Services Agreement with Len Marchese. 44913, it's a notice of public hearing to consider amending Town Code Section 330-84 height to allow additional height for new dwellings with gabled roofs located in flood zones. 44915, designate the Town Planning and Development Administrator to sign Central Pine Barrens Commission hardship exemption application. 44920, authorize Town Attorney to enter into a stipulation of settlement to settle all litigation with Building the Farm LLC. 44922 is warrant number 22. 44923, authorizes supervisor to execute an intermunicipal agreement with the County of Suffolk as it relates to the use of American Rescue Act ARPA funds in furtherance of the Riverside Sewer District. 44925, co-sponsored with Councilman Schiavone, authorizes the supervisor to sign an intermunicipal emergency services agreement for police tactical team cooperation with the villages of Quogue, West Hampton Beach, and Southampton. 44926, sponsored by Councilman Martell, authorizes the supervisor to execute necessary documents relating to highway department structures at 1524 North Sea Road Highway Yard and 116 Old Riverhead Road Highway Yard. And then 44928 ratifies the stipulation of settlement. So let me make a motion to walk all 9 of those on. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Schiavone. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that was unanimous. So those will be added on to our agenda. We can take them up at the end. All right. Well, so next I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of our November 14th, 2023 meeting.
Second.
Second by Councilman Martell. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, approved. Next, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of our special town board meeting, November 16th, 2023.
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman McNamara. All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Okay. I see more cards heading my way. If you wish to speak at any of the public hearings or the public portion, we ask that you fill out a card. You'll find them at the table in the hallway. All right, next we'll go to communications. Madam Clerk, would you please read the communications?
The following communications have been received in the office of the town clerk. We have received public notices from the New York State Association of Towns, notification of 2024 newly elected town officials school. New York State Department of Public Service, notification of 2023-24 winter preparedness workshops. New York State Office of Cannabis Management, notification to local municipalities from the listed establishments. New York State Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance, notification of 2023 New York State Low Income Household Water Assistance Program. Village of Sag Harbor, notice of adoption. Town Fire District's notices of annual elections on December 12th, 2023, from 6 to 9 p.m. for Bridgehampton, East Quogue, Eastport, Flanders, Hampton Bays, North Sea, Riverhead, and the West Hampton Beach Fire Districts. Annual financial disclosure statement filing from the listed individuals. Emails, letters, and land use applications have been received regarding the following: Battery Energy Storage System, BESS, facility in Hampton Bays, notice of intent to sell number 47 Savannah Lane South, Southampton, plan for Coast Guard housing in West Hampton, planning board matter of 150 Lumber Lane, Bridgehampton, planning board matter of Oceanside map 406 Quogue, proposed climate action plan, proposed term limit amendment. From the Conservation Board, an application for 11 West Shore Drive, North Sea. Bid and request for proposals were received on November 8th for a 2022 F-150 4x4 Super Crew elevation for the Hampton Bays Water District. The following reports were filed from the tax receiver, the transfer of water arrears to the 2023-2024 tax roll. And that concludes the communications for this meeting's agenda.
All right, thank you so much, Cindy. Okay, we're going to move on to public hearings. And this is a hybrid meeting, so we'll be able to hear from those here at Town Hall, but we also will be able to hear from people who are participating from remote locations. We'll take speakers first from our Town Hall audience. Okay, Madam Clerk, would you read the first public hearing notice?
Public hearing number 1, to consider amending Town Code, Section 330-50, 330-51, and 330-109 in connection with the permitting process for agricultural fencing.
Okay, Assistant Town Attorney Katie Garvin will introduce us.
Good evening, Assistant Town Attorney Katie Garvin. Public hearing number 1 proposes amendments to the town code to streamline and expedite the permitting process for applications for agricultural fencing that exceed the permitted height. Currently, applications for agricultural fencing are permitted for properties located in the agricultural overlay district or those that are preserved by easements or the transfer of development rights. Those applications go to the building department and then are forwarded to the planning board, and the planning board reviews them pursuant to some criteria that's currently in the town code. For all other properties, they go to the zoning board of appeals if they're in agricultural production, and then the ZBA, has a public hearing and they consider the criteria that the planning board considers, but they are granting variances. What's proposed before you is to substitute the town planning and development administrator, which is Janice right now, for the planning board. So those applications will just go to Janice right now, and she will consider all the criteria that the planning board considers, and then she can make a recommendation. It just will save a step, making it faster for the farmers, making it easier, and basically just eliminating that step of having to wait for to get on the planning board's agenda. When Councilwoman McNamara and I initially drafted this, we sent it to the Ag Advisory Committee for their recommendations, and they came back to us and asked that the properties that typically go to the ZBA be included in the streamlined process as well. And the only additional criteria they asked for those properties is that they present, when they file their application, they present a copy of their property record card, which would confirm that the property is currently in agricultural production. So we added that as well. The proposed amendment was also forwarded to the planning board. They made recommendations to codify the criteria that the planning board has been looking at. We did not add that because it's not in the town code now. Our recommendation would be that Janice just consider those criteria when she's reviewing them as well. And it's a type 2 under SECRA. We've heard from the Suffolk County Planning Commission. And after we get all the public comments, I do want to tomorrow circulate a copy. I saw a typo in here. It's in my legislative intent, and it's also in B. I just have a capital I instead of a little I for the numbers. So I do want to circulate that tomorrow.
So a typical fence is what, 6 feet or 4 feet?
The typical fence in the town,
Yeah.
4 feet in the front yard, 6 feet on in the sides or the rear.
So for deer fencing, it would be able to go up to 8.
Yep, and that's how it is right now.
Okay. I notice sometimes, and I understand there's so many deer, and, to be able to protect the crop, you have to do it. It's happening everywhere, and 8 feet is probably the minimum. That's what you need to keep the deer from jumping over. I do sometimes see these fences, though, get ivy grows throughout them sometimes, and then they become, not that we necessarily have the right to see into the farm fields.
It's already in the code.
But, is there anything that would require the farmer to maintain the vista so that, they do general maintenance for ivies and things like that?
There's nothing in the code right now. The planning board, when the planning board looks at these, they actually talk about maintaining
right.
the vistas.
Yeah, B6.
Yeah,
it's
Sorry,
in here.
Katie, I didn't want to get it. Talks about
Where are you?
the second page of the resolution or the papers and
The installation of the fencing will be,
Oh, yeah, will be accomplished in a manner to
330-50.
preserve and protect the
B.
visual and scenic
Right.
resources.
B6.
So that
That's
already,
the installation, but in terms of the maintenance, ongoing maintenance.
yeah, so no, there's nothing in the town code that talks about the ongoing maintenance. The planning board, one of their typical conditions is that view sheds be preserved, but even then, I don't think they were thinking of the maintenance of the fence. I think they were more like, please don't put up hedges to screen the fence, to protect the vistas.
And
I
that's
mean,
not something that's currently in the legislation. Even if it goes before the planning board, the
Correct.
same situation could theoretically
But they
exist.
typically have been
Correct.
imposing
Yeah.
that, right? With that permission to go to 8 feet, they do require some maintenance of it. The planning board does it. Now we're not going to the planning board, we're going to the,
Yeah, no, but what I'm saying is the planning board will often put as a condition that, that they will often put as a condition, I'm just gonna find it here, where existing view sheds exist, there should be no vegetative screening on either side of the ag fencing. But that's what I'm saying, it doesn't talk about, growth going through the fence. It
Yeah.
talks about, I think, purposely screening the fences. Because, sometimes neighbors want the fences screened, and I think the planning board has said, most of the time, people want to see the farm fields. So no, I guess you could maybe put that under property maintenance.
right. It's something I guess we can talk about whether we should add something like that to a law like this.
Which
that
is
would-
something, right.
Because, I mean, I'm trying to think into the future and,
Could
I
Janice,
think people do enjoy the vistas of the farmland.
Janice make it in a,
yeah, condition of it, could Janice make a condition of her approval like the planning board does?
Sure,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think the whole, sometimes it's hard to legislate some of this stuff, and even when the planning board was talking about not allowing the vegetative screening, well, sometimes you might want it, right? There might be a neighbor that abuts it, and maybe in the back, you do want part of it. So we could certainly mention that to Janice. I don't know how that would look in a code amendment, other than like keeping up the maintenance of the fence, which I think you could say is part of property maintenance.
Yeah.
Katie, I have a question about a zoning variance. If, the way our code reads now, a farmer would have to go to the planning board and get permission for a 6-foot fence on the property. Why would they have to go to the zoning board if our code directs them to the planning board, they
Yep.
get permission from the planning board?
The properties that go to the zoning board are the properties that aren't in the ag overlay district, or they're not preserved by easement, or they're not preserved by development rights. So it's just, there's some properties in the town that you could build a house on, there's no easements on it, but the farmers want to farm it anyways. So those properties go to the ZBA. And then the ZBA, I don't know if you ever heard one when you sat with the ZBA, but the ZBA will go through the same findings. Is this currently in agricultural production? Have you tried lower fences? They went through the same criteria that the planning board does. And that's what the Ag Advisory Committee said. If somebody can prove through their property record card that it is being farmed, it has that designation, then they should be able to be afforded the same quicker, application process.
Okay. Outside of the agricultural overlay.
Outside of
district.
the, yes.
Okay.
I don't think there's too many. I think since I've been sitting with the ZBA, I've seen maybe 5. But they're always granted, assuming they meet those criteria.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else have any questions?
No, we do have a lot of deer though, and I know they, left unchecked, they will devour a farm field.
The whole crop.
Okay.
All right, thank you,
thank you,
Katie.
Katie.
All right, is there any, I don't have any cards that indicated they wanted to speak at the first public hearing. Mr. Bennett?
Very quickly, John Bennett, just so I understand this, so this gives Janice the permitting authority in both instances, is that correct? Yeah.
Up to 8 feet.
Yeah, the only thing I would, in full support of it, for probably 25 years, Gil Flanagan was the farmland permit administrator and took care of these things. Sending someone to the planning board or the zoning board of appeals when they're in active farmland production to wait to put up a fence is the sort of thing that leads to frustration in terms of over-regulation. So this is a great step, because for years, you had one person who very wisely used their discretion, and it was the farmland permit administrator. It sounds like this is sort of what you're going back to, and I think you should pass it quickly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Which is exactly what the Ag Advisory Board said, and that's why Katie and I worked on this to get it brought forward, so.
Anyone else who wishes to be heard? We'll go to our online audience. Is there anyone who wishes to be heard at public hearing number 1? I see somebody on the screen, so just identify yourself.
Sure. My name is Rob Carpenter, and I'm the director of Long Island Farm Bureau. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'll keep my comments very brief. We are in support of these code changes, and we feel that they will help to relieve a lot of frustration by the agricultural community when they're applying for their deer fence permits. Wildlife is a tremendous problem on Long Island and on the East End, and causes millions of dollars annually to agricultural crops throughout the season. There's definitely no question that deer population has exploded over the last 20 years, and it creates a big problem for farmers who invest a lot of time and effort into growing their crops. These code changes will help farmers by expediting the process to get a deer fence installed on their property when needed. We believe this is a very positive move by the town board, and we encourage you to pass these code changes as presented. And we thank you very much for your time and effort in doing this. I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you want to call me at any time at the Farm Bureau, I'm always glad to be of assistance to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
All right, Charlie, anybody else online?
No, sir.
All right, Councilwoman, you okay with closing it?
Yes, please.
All right, so a motion to close the public hearing by Councilman McNamara, seconded by?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Martell. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll move on to public hearing number 2. Madam Clerk, would you please read the hearing notice?
Public hearing number 2, to consider amending Town Code, Chapter 298, Taxation, to amend Article 11, Partial Exemption for Disabled Persons with Limited Incomes, to add a definition for income for purposes of the exemptions.
Okay, we have Deputy Town Attorney Kathleen Murray.
Thank you,
Will
Mr. Supervisor.
present.
Would the board like to have the third public hearing called as well, since the laws mimic each other?
I would like that, yes.
Okay, Madam Clerk, would you call the third public hearing as well, and we'll take comments together?
Public hearing number 3, to consider amending Town Code, Chapter 298, Taxation, to amend Article 5, Exemption for Senior Citizens, to add a definition for income for purposes of the exemptions.
All right, so once again, Kathleen Murray, Deputy Town Attorney, will present.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Good evening, members of the Town Board. Currently, Town Code Chapter 298, which addresses taxation, authorizes particular exemptions for senior citizens and for disabled persons. Specifically, real property owned by these qualifying individuals is exempt from taxation by the town to the extent that up to 50% of the assessed valuation may be relieved or exempt where there is an annual income of no more than $50,000. Thereafter, there is a correlating sliding scale of the percentage of assessed valuation that is exempt from taxation based upon an individual's annual income. So as an annual income moves from $50,000 up to the maximum of $58,400, the percentage of assessed valuation that is exempt from taxation decreases respectively from 45% down to 5%. And that sliding scale is currently reflected in your town code. Recently, Part K of Chapter 59 of the laws of 2023 was enacted, amending real property tax law Section 467 as it relates to seniors and 459-C as it relates to disabled persons to clarify what is considered income for this specific purpose. So the purpose of this local law before you is to clarify how the town chooses to calculate income when applying these exemptions based upon the state enabling legislation. In sum, the term income shall mean adjusted gross income for federal income tax purposes as reported on the applicant's federal or state income tax return with the following 5 conditions. First, any Social Security benefits not included in the applicant's federal adjusted gross income shall be considered income. That is a local option. There is authority not to include Social Security benefits, but the proposal does not exercise that option.
And I'd like to come back to that one
Okay.
later on.
Absolutely. 2, distributions received from an individual retirement account or annuity that were included in the applicant's federal adjusted gross income shall not be considered income. That is also a local option, and there is authority to include these payments when determining income, but the proposal does not exercise that option. 3, the applicant's income shall be offset by all medical and prescription drug expenses actually paid that were not reimbursed or paid for by insurance. And that also is a local option, which this law is providing for. 4, any tax-exempt interest or dividends that were excluded from the applicant's federal adjusted gross income shall be considered income. There's no local option here. This mimics the state law. And 5, finally, any losses that were applied to reduce the applicant's federal adjusted gross income shall be limited in that the net amount of losses reported on federal schedules C, D, and E shall not exceed $3,000, and the net losses of any other category shall not exceed $3,000, and the total amount of losses shall not exceed $15,000. And again, there's no local option for that provision. That is the change to the legislation, and the town code is now just articulating that for clarity. The town's sole assessor, Lisa Gorey, is here to answer any more specific questions you may have regarding the definition of income for these purposes. Does the board have any questions for me?
No? Well, thank you for the presentation. We brought this forward. We're trying to give our seniors and disabled persons who fit the criteria as much deference as possible as far as assessment goes for their taxes with the towns. School districts would be treated separately, is that correct? And
Correct.
they would have to, school districts themselves would have to pass this legislation as well for school tax assessment for school taxes to be applied to them. Question about Section 1, right? We discussed this, Ms. Murray. Any Social Security benefits not included in the applicant's federal adjusted gross income shall be considered income. That to me does not seem like it would fit federal law. If people are earning gross income outside of what they're reporting, shouldn't that be reported? And that's a question to our sole assessor. I'd like to make a change here and add the word not be considered in this. Is there any, would that have a substantial difference in what we're doing?
I'm sorry, Lisa, we have recording, and
Yeah.
I want everybody to be able to go back and review this if they need to.
I should have invited you up. Welcome.
Hi, good evening, Supervisor and Town Council members. So in answer to your question as to why we are not excluding all of the Social Security income is because we have quite a few people, quite a few recipients of this exemption now that only have Social Security as their only way of income. If we exclude that, then that leaves them at a zero income. What we currently do, but prior to this enactment, if the town does adopt it, is that we were taking the full Social Security. So even though on their federal income taxes, they're only required to report what's taxable, for this exemption, we have to consider the full Social Security. The way the law is making it now is that we start off with the federal adjusted gross income, which we term FADGI. So we start off with FADGI, and then we take the full Social Security amount, and then we subtract out the taxable, because that's already been included in the federal adjusted gross income. So if we exclude the entire Social Security, like I said, that leaves the recipients at a zero income. And I think that would make the decision even more harder for the schools, because if you recall, last year, we also adopted the higher income limits, where we went from 37,004 as the maximum to 50,000. Quite a few of our school districts did not adopt that. So our recipients are receiving it on the town's portion of their tax bill, but not on the schools. And I can only foresee that this would be the same thing.
So,
Is
so
that the
in
town
essence,
may
it will
adopt
hurt
it and the schools won't. And then that makes it makes the calculation more difficult for the assessor to have to calculate two different calculations. So
this-
even though before we were including full Social Security, now we are taking out the taxable portion, if that's what is adopted here.
So it would make the school districts less likely to adopt this code
Correct.
and
Correct,
cause a higher tax burden on the people we're trying to help, essentially.
correct.
If we added the word not and just didn't consider they're non-taxable, that the school districts can make their own choice on how they want to parse this out.
Yes, they have to make their own choice.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Lisa or Kathleen? Did you cover both the hearings?
They're essentially the same, Mr. Supervisor.
What's the distinction?
Really just the section of law. So either under Town Code Chapter 298, there's Article 5 addresses seniors, and Article 9 addresses disabled persons. Other than that, the changes are identical.
Because the criteria is the same
Right.
for both exemption types, they pretty much, any changes that the state makes, they go hand in hand.
Okay, and the idea behind this law is to provide some relief to people on fixed incomes who are sort of low to moderate income. Yeah, if you start adding, if you don't include Social Security as part of the income, that would really, I think, create a lot more people who could take advantage of this, but then
It will
other
also
people have to
an
then
impact
absorb
on-
that. We're gonna have, everybody else's taxes go up a little bit to cover that. So that's I think it's just a choice we have to make as to who should be covered and who shouldn't be covered.
Yes, and as the assessor pointed out, it would make the school districts less likely to adopt the law, to join in on this, right, to opt in on the,
That's their call.
Right.
But out-of-pocket medical expenses, I think
We've
it's
always
entirely
done that.
appropriate.
We've always excluded any out-of-pocket medical expenses. The individual retirement accounts, we never included that. But now the state is just giving assessors an option not to include it, but we've never included it.
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, I think I have one card, maybe. It says maybe, Amy, that's you?
I wasn't sure. Hi there, Amy Paradise. Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Listening to this is one of those things where you've got so many rules and regulations, it's hard for the ordinary person to really see what's going on. And the question for me is, can you tell how many people, you said more people would have the reduction available to them if you put in the new rules? Do I understand that correctly?
There was a
Like a
particular
town law.
clause that I had asked about, and
Yeah,
yes, that's
so-
what the
so-
solar assessor said.
But the school districts don't have to follow suit and are not
Correct.
likely to because they lose income?
It is their decision to do so or not.
I just want to clarify two things. One, I'm not sure you fall into the category of ordinary people. I think you're an extraordinary person, so thank you for coming. And secondly, though,
It's nothing extraordinary about me. I'm I'm part of this group, not quite as low as this, but in the middle, who frequently feels like we get to pay for everybody else.
So what I, my
So
main,
that's,
what I wanted to say though is that you had said that the school districts would lose income or lose revenue. And that's not the case. The school is still gonna collect what they need to run the school, but how that gets distributed will change. So if some people are paying less, other people are paying more, it's gonna add up to the same amount of money. So I just wanted to correct the record on that. The schools don't lose money by adopting it, but it does lead to a sort of a redistribution of the money that they collect. And, you know, the bulk of your tax bill is the school. Your property
oh, I
taxes.
know that.
70,
Big time.
75%, some cases maybe up to
Yes.
80% is
Yes.
school.
I
Okay.
know. How negative effect would it have on the town budget, or would it do the same thing with the town budget?
It's the
up
same
and
thing.
down?
It's a redistribution. Town will still get the same money it needs to operate. But if one person pays less, other people have to make up for that. So we want to make sure that if we are providing some relief on property taxes, that we're really targeting the people who need it the most. And before, there were people who needed the relief who weren't getting it because they weren't eligible, so we lifted the incomes a little bit to adjust for inflation and other things.
That
And
certainly has
there's
changed.
some more relief built into this as well.
Ah, wow. Okay, I guess I don't really know what to say. I would want to be sure that it didn't negatively impact a whole bunch of people, but you're right, you have to keep your budget balanced, so you have to leave that to the accountants. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Amy.
Amy. Thank you.
All right, anyone else who didn't fill out a card who wishes to be heard at public hearing number 2 and 3? All right, we'll go online. Charles, do we have anyone indicating they wish to be heard? If you are watching this from a remote location and you want to be heard by the town board, this is at public hearing 2 and 3. You need to click the raise hand icon.
There are no hands.
All right, so to close this, we're gonna need 2 separate motions. So Councilman, this is yours, so do you want to make a motion to close public hearing number 2?
So moved?
I'll second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so that's closed, and
I'd
same
like to make a
motion.
motion to close public hearing number 3.
And I'll second again, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, excellent. Okay, we're gonna move on to public hearing number 4. Madam Clerk, would you please read the hearing notice?
Public hearing number 4, to consider amending Town Code, Chapter 64, term limits, to establish a total eligible term for the supervisor and town council members of 12 years.
All right, I will call upon Deputy Town Attorney Kathleen Murray to introduce this.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Good evening, members of the town board. Currently, the town of Southampton remains one of only 5 towns on Long Island that imposes a term limit as it relates to the elected offices of supervisor and town council. Of those 5 towns, the town of Southampton is the only town on Long Island that limits the total number of eligible terms to 8 years. That is 4 2-year terms for the supervisor and 2 4-year terms for town council members. The remaining towns on Long Island, that is Brookhaven, Huntington, Islip, and Riverhead, instead limit the total eligible term for the supervisor and town council members to 12 years. And the most similarly situated town, that of East Hampton, imposes no term limits. So the proposal before you seeks to align the town's term limits and be consistent with those of other municipalities on Long Island that impose a 12-year term limit. If I may, I'd like to briefly discuss the legal and enabling authority surrounding this proposal because I know that you have received some correspondence on it. Specifically, I'd like to address 2 legal issues. First, the authority for a mandatory referendum, and second, the doctrine of legislative equivalency. As it relates to the authority for a mandatory referendum, a local law is subject to a mandatory referendum if it falls within the list of actions or categories included in Municipal Home Rule Law, Section 23, or if a specific state statute calls for one. Relevant to this discussion, a mandatory referendum is required if the board changes the term of an elected office pursuant to Municipal Home Rule Law, Section 23, subsection 2E. We now know through case law and post-1994 that the phrase changes the term of an elective office speaks to changing the length of the term of office. So, for example, if there was a proposal to change the supervisor's seat from its current 2 years to 4 years, or the town council seats from its current 4 years to 6 years, that would be subject to a mandatory referendum, which is to be distinguished from establishing a term limit, which has been ruled by the courts to be setting a qualification for office. That is to say, is a person eligible to run for office based on the term limits? And importantly, establishing eligibility criteria or qualifications for office are not subject to mandatory referendum. Rather, establishing qualifications is a power granted to the town under Municipal Home Rule Law, Section 10(1)(2)A, which is a provision we use all the time in order to promulgate laws aimed at the specific needs of the town, provisions which relate to the property, affairs, or government of the town. The case law addressing the issue of term limits as qualifications for office is settled and includes most notably the United States Supreme Court decision of U.S. Term Limits Incorporated v. Thornton in 1995, and the New York State Court of Appeals decision from 2013, Herger v. Spoda, as well as the 2012 decision of Spoda v. Suffolk County from Supreme Court Justice Gazzillo, which plainly stated there can be no dispute that term limits are qualifications for an elected office. The issue has been resolved. Second, I'd like to briefly talk about the doctrine of legislative equivalency. The doctrine of legislative equivalency is a principle to be recognized and abided by where appropriate, but it is not absolute, and it does not trump state statute and state law. By way of background, the doctrine of legislative equivalency basically says that a law can be changed or removed through the same procedures that we use to create it. So for this board, that often looks like a public hearing and/or a duly adopted resolution. Importantly, the doctrine of legislative equivalency cannot authorize that which is not otherwise allowed or legal, and here that would be an advisory referendum. So, as discussed, the state legislature has dictated either through a municipal home rule law or a specific state statute that which the voters can decide and vote upon for approval. And setting a qualification for office is not one of those actions. So even though the process for a local law may involve a mandatory referendum, once that law passes, it lives like any other law, and it can be amended the same way as any other law, unless that specific amendment is subject to mandatory referendum. That is, unless the legislature has said that amendment, that action triggers a referendum under municipal home rule law. Without that statutory trigger, the doctrine of legislative equivalency cannot authorize a mandatory referendum. There is a case out of the Second Department that I would like to briefly quote because I do think that it's helpful to illustrate the issue. It's a 2003 case that is Golden v. New York City Council, and the question raised was similar, that is, whether a law created by referendum could be amended by the New York City Council without referendum. And the court said two things. First, the law amending the term limit provision of the city charter without changing the length of the term of office was not subject to mandatory referendum. And second, the fact that the term limit provisions were enacted through voter referendum did not preclude the city from amending those provisions, since, quote, laws enacted by the people under an initiative provision are subject to the same constitutional and statutory limitations as those passed by the legislature and are entitled to no greater sanctity or dignity. So, while the setting or changing of term limits is certainly a policy discussion and a debate to be had, from a legal perspective, I submit that you have full legal authority to change the law as proposed if you are so inclined to do so. Does the board have any questions?
So there's no provisions for mandatory referendum. Is there a provision for permissive referendum?
No, there is not. Permissive referendum is typically triggered when you're taking an action under New York State town law. Municipal Home Rule Law has a very specific list of what triggers a mandatory referendum. The only section where there's a petition for the mandatory referendum is if something is subject to mandatory referendum, you can petition for a special election. But that's kind of a different issue.
You had mentioned the 5 of the towns on Long Island
Yes.
that have term limits, and Southampton being the only one with 8-year term limits. But across New York State, there are over 900 towns,
Yes, correct.
and approximately 1% of them have term limits.
Right. We reached out to the Association of Towns, and our understanding is that out of approximately 932 townships, only about 11 towns statewide impose term limits on the elective offices of supervisor and town council.
And of those 11, I think less than half have 8-year term limits.
Correct.
And
And
the
no,
only large town I saw, because most of the towns that have the 8-year term limits are very small.
correct, yes.
Very small population. The only one is Amherst, which has, it's a slightly larger town, but they have an 8-year term limit, but 8 consecutive years. So you can leave and then come back for another 8 years, but you do have to leave office. It's not a life limit as, now, I believe Southampton's law, and I don't have the exact language in front of me, but it's 8 total years.
Total, correct, is the language.
If you have served a full 8 years, then you're ineligible for an additional term
In that office, right.
in that office.
Mhm.
But if somebody, like we had a couple council people who served partial terms.
Mhm.
Julie Lofsted was one of them. Bridget Fleming, I believe, was another. They filled somebody else's term who had left early. Then they ran for a full term. I don't think in either one of those cases they ran for a term after that. One left, and the other one ran for legislator, where she still is the legislator. Would they have been able to run for an additional term, which would have put them over 8 years, or would they have had to leave office midterm?
I would submit that they're eligible to run because that qualification hasn't been triggered yet in that they haven't yet served a full 8 years. So it's certainly arguable, could be subject to litigation, but I would submit that if you have 6 years, you could still seek office for 2, certainly 2, but perhaps 4,
4-year term,
Yeah.
so you could end up with 10 years of service.
arguably.
Because when you ran, you hadn't completed 8 years.
Correct.
Exactly. Any other questions?
So we've had this, yes, I have a couple. We've had this in place since 1994,
Yes.
and we've had a number of council people and one supervisor term out, and several council members term out. So we could not put this to a public referendum if we wanted to, a vote of the town board, that,
Correct.
in your opinion. Now, and also, the public could not circulate petitions and
Correct.
trigger a referendum. Like, that
Right.
just is
There's
completely
no
off.
mechanism for that, no.
And it was out to a public referendum in 1994 because the cases did not exist at that
Correct.
time.
Most notably, the 1995 United States Supreme Court case.
Okay.
So in 1994, they did not have the benefit of the case law interpreting this very provision that we now have the benefit of. So, they probably erred on the side of caution and thought it was best to put it out for referendum. I certainly appreciate that. But now with the case law that we've had specific to this issue, it's improper to do so.
So the referendum that went out, now I want to quote it here. It says, local law, or shall local law number 20 of 1994 establishing term limits for the supervisor and members of the town council in the town of Southampton be approved. That was the language of the referendum in 1994. There was no mention of the term limits. How were they able to do that?
That's not unusual for it to be phrased that way.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, that's attached to a local law that was subject to public hearings. I don't know how many public hearings they had, but likely several. And certainly that notice of public hearing, the public hearings discuss that specific term length. So would more accurate drafting be, now put that actual number in there? Arguably, yes, but the referendum is voting on the local law that was adopted, right? It's subject to voter approval. So that local law has indicated.
So voters would have to go take a look at the local law, look at the work sessions, read the articles in the paper. I'm sure this was well covered, all
Right,
that.
yeah,
It-
and the
but
abstract
when
of
they went into the
resolution will be
voting booth-
available at BOE.
In the voting booth, they would have to know what local law 20 of 1994 was.
Correct,
They saw term limits and they passed it.
yeah.
Okay. Local law number 20 of 1994, this is not a question, it's more of a statement. It was passed 3 votes to 1 on a 5-member board. I'm still trying to figure out where the other person was in that. There's 5 members on the board, but it was a split vote even at that time, and, it went to public referendum. So, because I know we started this conversation talking about going out to the public with this.
Sure.
You did.
My belief is that Southampton is an outlier, that, this is a statement, that Southampton is an outlier with other towns in the state. The vast majority of the 923 towns have no term limits at all. But we did have a public referendum for the county.
Correct.
And in the county, that public referendum for term limits passed in Southampton town by 84%. So, and in that referendum, they mentioned the 12-year term limits for county legislators. And I think that's significant. They put the years in there, people voted, 84% said yes, 16% said no, in Southampton town.
And just as a footnote, Mr. Councilman Scavone, municipal home rule law has a different section that governs counties, section 34. 34 sub 4 allows amendments to a county charter to be put out to referendum on the county legislature's own motion. So to the extent that somebody might be wondering, well, how come the county was able to do it and we can't? It's a separate section of
And the county was slightly different too. They had 12-year term limits, but what was the change that they had
I believe it
made?
was consecutive versus non-consecutive.
Theoretically, a legislator could
Later
serve
come
12
back.
years
Yeah.
and then come back 4 years later and run for another, or
Right, it
12
was
years.
12 consecutive years.
If the people of the district elected them, right? And that's a basic tenet to this whole thing.
Yeah, they went
Okay.
from consecutive years to life. It's an interesting footnote because, as you know, I was a legislator who was term limited and
Mhm.
left after 12 years, came here to be supervisor. And I think I'm the first supervisor since they've had an 8-year term limit to actually reach the term limit. So,
Perhaps.
Well,
I think there might have been another. Yeah.
no, Marty Lang was he did 8 years, but was before there was term limit, so that was his choice. You know, 'cause we're the first one who's actually met the term limit.
that's
All right.
cool. Just one other thing is that, I'm sure there's a number of people who are going to come up to speak, and I was elected in 2017, and this was in place. I was reelected in 2021. I will not be seeking a 3rd term on this board for that reason, for the public's edification. I do support this. I think it's the right thing to do.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Kathleen? Okay, so we'll go to the public. We have a number of cards, people who wish to be heard, so we're going to start here at Town Hall, and then we'll go to our online audience. First up is Eileen McFellin.
Good evening, and thank you. And may I say first, thank you all for your service, those who are leaving. And I'm sure you're going to stay as involved as you have been in everything that we need. I don't agree that term of office should be extended beyond 8 years at any one time. Just my personal opinion. I think the highest law in the land does not give beyond. If they go 4, they have to go through it again. I think 8 is long enough to accomplish what you want to accomplish. And if it's good enough, somebody will carry on with it. And if not, then it's somebody else's time to see what they can offer instead. So
All
I'm
right,
not for it.
appreciate your thoughts.
Thank you.
Okay, next, Amy Paradise.
Hi there, again. I thought I'd give the example of my job last summer where they took 45 minutes out of my schedule in the busiest part of the day, added 2 requirements. And so I had to, what it taught me was how to focus really hard and be very efficient. So term limits and time limits are the same thing. I advocate for it. It makes you work harder.
Thank you, Amy. All right, next up, Brian Babcock.
Can I submit something for the record, or?
Sure.
I have copies for everybody. Oh, I think, I have 8 copies.
Thank you.
Thanks. Just a quick funny note, Jay, you haven't finished your term yet.
I have not.
Good evening. First, let me thank you guys for your term, for your service. It's a great asset to the town. I'm not here to get into yes or no on it. I just have a couple of quick points to make. I submitted to the clerk an article from dated July 18th, 27 East of July 18th of 2022. It actually has Jay on the front page, quoted many times. This was brought up before.
Yep.
The headline says a lot to me. He vowed not to extend his own term limit. I'll quote him, "I have no plans to extend my own term limit." Another quote was, if there was a vote, he would disqualify himself. He said again, a quote, "I would not give this to myself." Mr. Bouvier's not here tonight. He also said in the same article, provided this in front of me, it would be self-serving that he would not vote on this as well, on term limits. So what I'm basically here to say is that if you've already given yourself up, this shouldn't even come to a vote this year. I would say postpone this until the next board comes along. And I suppose, if I understand correctly, there was a lot of legal stuff going on. I don't really know all of it, but if this isn't going to be put to a public referendum, then it just becomes you guys voting based on how you feel, right? So, am I correct on that? There's no public referendum.
We can't put it to a public.
Right.
hearing.
The only thing I did here is changing the term of elected official. I'm not, it's kind of, in my head, I'm trying to think if there's a change in anywhere that would change this to put this to a public vote, or even close to do it. I mean, I know laws do have loopholes, and I know they have other ways of trying to find ways to do things. If it's convoluted and there's a gray area to the public, I would encourage you not to make it as if you're disenfranchising the voters on moving forward with the term limits. So,
You know, that's an interesting point, and I'd like to stop you there and just make a comment. Brookhaven did something like that when they put it out to a public referendum, but they extended the term of the supervisor from 2 years to 4 years, which triggered the public referendum, which is something that we are not doing here. So that went out to the public, but then they called it term limits. It passed. The supervisor got 4 years instead of 2. Then we're
right.
moving
Well, I don't
forward.
know who was running the board at that time, but I mean, they could change I guess they could change words, right? To
There were 5 people, right?
Yeah, it's questionable whether they could have snuck the other thing in as they did.
right.
Yeah, if you change the supervisor's term from 2 to 4 years, that has to go to
Okay.
the public. They added that other thing to that decision so that they were voting on, public was voting on
Right.
both. If somebody challenged that, they probably would have had to separate it out and not put that one on the ballot. But Brian, I
You
did
kind of
want-
hit on it. I
I
think
did
that-
want to respond to this
Go
too,
ahead.
because, I stand by everything I said here. That,
Okay.
I could have, the, 3 members of this town board could have voted to change it from 8 years to 12 years. That would have made me eligible to run, whether I would decide to run for a 5th term or not. But I did feel that would be self-serving. Doing it this way enables future supervisors, future town board members. And I feel very strongly this is complicated work, right? We're responsible for the public safety of hundreds of thousands of people in the summertime, certainly. Hundreds of millions of dollars in public money. It's a serious job, and it's an administrative job. We are the administrator. There's no town manager. And, you know, if you were looking for a CEO or CFO, that's what the supervisor is, of a large company, you know, would you disqualify anyone who had 8 or more years of experience? No, you probably disqualify people who had less than that, because you want qualified people. You want institutional knowledge. And when the town board doesn't have that institutional knowledge, and you constantly have new people coming in and coming out, the management of the town ends up falling to the department heads. And you have, because you're so reliant on the continuation of government services, and then you end up with non-elected people, basically, more of a bureaucracy. This empowers the voters to say, no, we want to elect the people who make the administrative decisions for the town. So that's sort of what's underscoring this. And the reason why, you know, by putting it off to, let's say, next year, then you get back into that conflict situation where people could be voting on their own self-interest. By, you know, Tommy John saying he has no intention of running again. I'm done at the end of this year. John's done at the end of this year. You have 3 of us who aren't going to benefit from it. But if we believe it's in the best interest of the community to have that kind of continuity, that institutional knowledge, and it's also, you know, it's challenging when you're asking somebody to serve on the board, you know, and you want to attract young people, and you have to leave your career because it's full-time work, and then you get 8 years and you got to go back, and you got to try to rebuild your career on the outside. It's not easy, you know. 12 years is a little bit better, and I think you'll see more qualified people who may step up and say, yeah, I want to serve my community. I'm going to run for town board. I'm going to run for town supervisor. So, like, I personally think this is the right thing to do. I wouldn't have put it forward if I didn't think it was in the town's best interest. It's, you know, it's not in my best interest, it's in the community's best interest.
May I respond?
Yeah.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Okay.
I never said that I would be for or against the term limit. I said more or less I would like to say the voters have an opportunity to speak on behalf of it rather than the 5 board members that are here. And you 5 board members might be great to make the decision. I'm not saying that you're not.
Okay.
It could have been a different set of board members there sitting there making this decision, and it could be going the other way. It could go to 4 years for each guy, girl. So I'm just stating what I saw. I read in the paper.
I would agree. I would have preferred to see it go out to ballot too.
So can I just weigh on it for 1 second, just because I, know this cannot go to a referendum, but I feel so strongly that because the public can't vote on this as a referendum, that those voting on it should be held accountable to the voters. Therefore, no matter how this plays, if this goes through and this passes, I plan on putting a public hearing on in the new year for the new board, who will be accountable to the voters to decide whether or not this stays or goes.
Right. Absolutely.
Good point.
If this gets put in place, the next board can change it again, go back, make it instead of 12 years, 16 years, whatever it is. That's their prerogative.
Unlimited terms.
Get rid of term limits altogether.
Because
Could be.
if we all look at the past election cycles and you want to hold people accountable to the voters, people have to be on the ballot, and it's not the voters who decide who's on that ballot. There's been times when the supervisor ran completely unopposed. The voters didn't have a choice in that election. So term limits make the people have that choice.
I mean, 8 years might not be enough. I get it. You get in there, you have to run another election in 4 years, and for 2 years for yourself. I
2
understand.
years.
I
So
know
for
4
supervisors,
four
that's-
for these guys.
that's
4 for you
6
and 2 for-
elections.
Yeah, I get it.
That's
If
a
you're
lot.
that good, you don't have to even get out there and do it, Jay.
It takes a
Amazing.
while.
This
for people
board
to come up to speed.
deciding this has no accountability to the voters, no accountability to the people. Nobody, there's a board majority currently that will not be accountable to the voters.
But Cindy, the beauty of it is the voters get to decide. If they don't want
No,
you to
they
say-
don't get to decide.
They do.
Because, Jay, last time you ran,
Hold
who
on,
ran
Cindy.
against you?
Last time there was 2.
No.
The
Last time you
I
ran, you
was
ran
The one
unopposed.
before that, though.
Nobody
I had
ran
2
against you.
opponents. That
So,
was the choice.
That's-
That was the choice of the party. They didn't have
That's
to do
right.
that.
that was a choice of
And
the party,
you have
not
a
the
public-
people.
You have a public process where people could have petitioned to be, to be on the ballot. But
It's a lot of
ultimately,
work and a lot of
ultimately,
money.
You're empowering the public. If they don't think you're doing a good job, they can
They
vote
vote
you
you out,
out.
right.
They vote you
If
out.
there's somebody on the ballot to,
That's democracy. Now, you're empowering the voters.
no, you're not.
Now you're not giving the voters a choice.
They
And
didn't
it
have a
takes
choice
while to
last time
come
you
up
got
to speed.
elected.
Takes a while.
But that wasn't because of term
This is
limits, that was because
complicated
of a
work.
decision
That was
of a
because of
political-
party,
that
not
was-
people.
May I finish? That was a decision of a political party in the town, not the people or this board or what we're really looking at right now.
And when the party has the ability to take that away from the people, that's where term limits come into
But there's a
play.
process where people, so anybody from the Republican Party could have petitioned and ran.
I disagree
It's
with
a
that.
lot of money.
There is a process. though.
Well, I thank you for listening to me. I
Thank you.
appreciate, what you guys done, and I look forward to
Thank you.
the future. Thanks.
We've done together, Brian, because I know we've had some good projects together.
Yes, we have. That's why I was being nice to you. But I am coming up again, so.
There you go. All right, so Meredith McAvery? What is, I'm sorry? McAvoy, I'm sorry. McAvoy.
Good evening. So as you know, term limits are put in place to prevent any one person from gaining too much power or influence in a position that's meant to serve the community so that it doesn't become self-serving. I oppose extending the term limits because my concern is the precedent this sets. Other towns have been mentioned, Brookhaven and Riverhead, and the fact that they have 12-year term limits. But as was mentioned prior, the one that we are most closely associated with was the town of East Hampton, which has no term limit. So that becomes my concern with after we hit our 12-year term limit, would then the next thing come to eradicate term limits? And then there's no accountability in that sense. So I think the 8-year term limit has worked well, and I think we should maintain it. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just mention, so East Hampton, right, it has no term limit. And I was once East Hampton supervisor and chose not to continue to run. But if you look around, right, first, Fred Thiel was actually supervisor at the time that this was done, and he went on to become an assemblyman. No term limits as state assembly, no term limits state senate, no term limits Congress, no term limits for
I don't
highway superintendent, no
Right.
term limits for tax receiver, no term limits for clerk, no term limits for town trustees. This is it. So, I mean, and I'm not proposing to get rid of term limits altogether. I'm not. I just know this is a complicated job, and for many people, it might take them 8 years to really come up to speed and to really get comfortable, and then they have to leave. And so, you want a board that has institutional knowledge. So, I think 12 is, that the right size, not 16, not anything longer. Because I do believe that without term limits, the power of incumbency is very strong, and you can develop fiefdoms, so to speak. But,
Sure.
so I think there should be term limits. But I just my personal feeling is that 8 is extremely short. That's why, 99% of the towns don't have term limits at all. And of those, that 1% that do, most of them are at 12 years.
Sure, but all of those other positions you mentioned, such as, congressmen and things, I don't believe that they should have no term limits.
I
I
agree
think
with
they
you.
should have term limits.
I
So
think they should
setting
too.
that as an example isn't really, in my opinion, a good example. They should not be able just to run like that. And you mentioned 8 years, and prior you mentioned, I understand it's a full-time job, and I am very appreciative of the work that you guys do and being out of the workforce. But in that sense, then if you're out of the workforce for 12 years and then going back into it, I think that would be even more difficult than being out of the workforce for just 8 years. And I also think that if 8 years, if you're in this position, you're doing this job and you're setting yourself up and, doing the work that you're doing, then the next person that comes in, you should be able to set them up and they should be able to maintain what you've started. And if they're good projects and whatever you're in the middle of working on, they should be able to continue on and continue with that work that's been done. So the 8 years, in that sense, it's a lot of service.
Surprisingly, some things take even more than 8 years.
I
Like,
believe
like a
that.
good example is that Riverside Sewer District that we've been working on for 8 years. It's
More.
or more, 2 administrations.
Sure,
that-
there's
that's going on.
a number of projects that would take more than 12 years. And as you mentioned, you may not be here for the next round, so then if this precedent is set, who knows what the next board will say? They'll say that, well, we set 12 years, let's go for 16 years.
Yeah, it's
You won't be
possible.
on the board to say what that will be
Or
in
they
that
could
sense.
go back
so.
to 8.
Yeah.
Or maybe 4.
Right.
Maybe they're,
Right,
maybe 1 term is enough.
right. So,
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Bill Pell?
Thank you, Supervisor and board members. So, I called Fred Thiel because I wanted to know why he did it originally. He said that the people were upset with the town board when he got on there, and the people wanted the term limits of 8 years. And so, it's been 29 years. That's a long time. It's been 4 supervisors and a number of town board members. Makes me want to think, what is on the supervisor's agenda to do it the last month he's gone? Is this his legacy? I really want to know that. And I think the people deserve to know. If the people can't vote on it, then maybe it should be put off for the next board. And that the next board be excluded from the term limits. I mean, taking advantage of it.
I can
Because-
answer that. I think it's the right thing for the community, Bill.
But
I do.
then let the people decide that.
Well,
So
you
find
can't.
find some way where the people can do it. Because right now, I think when I spoke to you the other day, you said something to me, and that sticks in my head. I'm not going to say what you told me, but it is an agenda, and I want to know what the agenda is. Your agenda. The people should know
Bill.
that.
Come on, you can't say that.
I'm not saying. I'm not
are you doing?
calling him out. I'm just asking him if he wants to say
You
it.
could-
Fine. You said you're not going to run Tommy John, which is fine. And I'm not going to take advantage of it. I'm going to do my 8 years or 4 years if I get reelected after 4 years. That's my option. But
Well, and if
in the
those-
29 years, why is it now? That's what I want to know.
It's worked for 29 years.
Works for 29 years. It should keep on working. The people are happy with it. Okay, there's a lot of people against it. I have not heard too many people for it. Okay?
How about you?
I'm not for it,
Okay, thank you.
But
Well,
thank
you're
you very
entitled to that
much.
opinion.
I am.
I've been involved for longer than 29 years in
Yes.
government, and I think this is the right thing to do. I don't
Yeah.
think Southampton should have a shorter term limit than anywhere, right?
Yeah.
The one town that's a decent-sized town, as I mentioned, Amherst, New York, it is 8 years, but it's 8 consecutive years.
Yeah.
So we're the only one that I can find that's a reasonably sized town that has such a draconian sort of restriction where you got
Yeah.
such a short term. Now, if you had a town manager, I might agree with you that the board then would become more of a policy board, and the operations of the board of the town is more through the town manager. Well, we don't have that. We are the administrative
But
body
you have to realize Southampton is unique in a lot of different
in
ways.
many ways, right?
And
But we're not unique in terms of municipal law. We are responsible to the people that we protect and that we serve.
then
And
find a way.
And so I believe, and you can try to come up with any, theory you may want, but I
I'm
believe
like you.
that this is in the
Like,
right
you come up with
interest.
theories, I come up with theories.
I believe this is in the public interest. I wouldn't do it if I
Well,
didn't
then,
think so.
if you think it's in the public interest, then find a way to put it on the ballot.
I can't make
Or
up
let the next
law.
board that's
Yeah,
I
let the
can't-
subject to the
I wanted to
voters.
put it on the ballot, and I was
decide.
told it's
Yeah,
ineligible.
Well, find a way to do it. If you think it's that important, find a way to do it.
I have found a way to
We
do
just
it.
got a legal opinion saying.
I know Tommy John, I heard
So
him.
finding
there's
a
always-
way
there's
would
always
be
a way.
outside of that legal
There's always a
opinion,
way.
Bill.
Come on, you're gonna be on this town
I know.
board. You're gonna be bound by the same municipal
Can't
laws
find
that
a
we
way.
are.
And I'm happy just to do my 4 years or 8 years,
Okay.
All right.
Wait,
When
thank
you say find a way, though, it's,
Yeah, you find a way
you
to do
find
it.
a legal way, and there is no legal way.
Well, there's always a way.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Stephanie McNamara?
Hi, thank you for having us here tonight for this public hearing, and thank you all for your service to the town. I support the term limits that are set forth by the town in the May 1994 referendum, or by public referendum, and I don't see any public benefit to changing the legislation to extend the terms, especially since this is not going before the public for a vote by public referendum. It has worked for 29 years. The people had the opportunity to speak, and you're taking that away from us, according to this new legislation that was reviewed before. I'm confused by some of the statements that were made indicating that the public has no right to oppose this by referendum or petition. The President of the United States is limited to 8 years, as it should be, and I think that the town needs to stand by that as well. I think 8 years is enough to do the job that you're brought in to do, and that's what the public voted on in 1994, and I think you need to stick by that. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, David Rung.
David Rung, resident of the village of Southampton. Yes, I'm that David Rung, the one who in the last year and a half has had 18 letters to the editor printed in the Southampton Press, including the lead letter in 2 out of the last 3 editions. Most of these letters have discussed the travesty of the method the village uses to allocate its tax burdens to residents, its method of determining assessed values of properties. The village sends real estate tax invoices that lie to residents because after wording full market value of this property, they have a lowball backed into number which has nothing to do with fair market value.
Mr. Rung, can I just interrupt you for a second, because you did indicate you're going to speak on
I
public hearing
understand
number
that,
4.
and I will get to that soon.
Okay.
Okay. They deceive the residents by using the term fair market value when, again, they don't use fair market value. And they refuse to tell residents how assessed values are determined. The present method discriminates against residents of lower valued properties, which exposes the village to class action lawsuit. I have an email from one of the trustees fully acknowledging this discrimination, and yet they do nothing about it. And recently, the mayor and trustees voted in a new compensation plan without accepting any input from residents. How is this relevant to this town meeting? At the November 9th village trustee meeting, the village wanted to change the length of terms. The overwhelming negative reaction of resident participants led to the tabling of the term extension resolution. And I would suggest that all those arguments brought up that had this vehement negative reaction apply to this same concept. And I hear what Cynthia's saying, that because of the way the political parties determine candidates, really voters don't have as much choice as they would in other circumstances. So I am, hopefully, tonight's meeting will result in abandoning this self-surveyed anti-resident proposal to extend term limits. I would also say, in relation to the referendum, it's not a matter always of what you can do versus what you should do. And I would suggest there should be a way to just have a preference vote on this issue. Don't call it a referendum. Just put out in front of the electorate, what is your preference? Find out what that answer is and see how that influences how this board wishes to vote. Thank you.
Mr. Ryan, I just want to say one
Yes.
thing, and you did say this, so what, the village proposal was to go from a 2-year term
It was,
to a 4-year term.
it was the length of terms, not
And
term limits.
without any, right, currently the village has no term limits whatsoever,
not.
they can stay for life.
I understand
And
that.
this wouldn't have changed that, maybe there would have been some support if they made it a 4-year term, but with a 12-year limit, but it was just going from 2 years to 4 years.
I understand. I would really like the village to have term limits for another reason, because that would make it impossible for these people to have, health care benefits for life, which are costing village taxpayers millions of dollars. Okay?
Right, thank
That
you,
would be
sir.
another reason to have term limits.
All right, thank you,
Any
sir.
more questions?
No, that's all.
Thank you.
All right, John Leonard, you're next.
Good evening, members of the town board. My name is John Leonard. I'm a resident of Hampton Bays. I also have a law office in Hampton Bays as well. I'm not necessarily opposed to to the 12-year term that has been proposed. And I do recognize, you being a lawyer, that it's not up for public referendum. There's case law to the Second Department, at which we're in that jurisdiction as recent as June 2023, where the city of Yonkers was changing the terms from 3 4-year terms to 4 4-year terms, and no public referendum was required. That case was McCardle versus City of Yonkers. I just question whether now is the time to do it. I've been listening in this room. I've been talking to people. I've read the newspaper. I've been to the civics, and there's not a lot of support for this right now. As a lawyer, I have an ethical obligation to avoid even the appearance of impropriety. I have to live my professional life making sure that nothing looks awry. And many times, I have to put aside my personal ambitions for what I see as the common good. And while I do have every faith in this board, believing that these term limits, this extension makes sense, and that it's good for our community, the problem that I see with it is that there isn't a ton of support for it on the ground. This is being brought up in the last month of the year. We have a new administration coming in. We have 2 new board members, a new supervisor coming in, and we've had 1 public hearing, which can only be described as sparsely attended. And I would prefer to see this board pause this, let it bleed over to the new year, and let the new town board address it through, I think what we need is community awareness, we need education. Supervisor, I understand that you're sitting here today and saying this is for the common good. Mm-hmm. The thing that I'm not hearing is the why. I'm hearing that 12 years is better than 8, but either of those are arbitrary numbers. We do that all the time in our lives. We draw arbitrary lines in the sand because it has to end somewhere. So I would like to see more discussion about the why. Why is this better for us? And I don't think it makes sense to just sit here today and tell us this is good for you, so you should have it. I would like the community to have a real voice in this. I understand we don't get a public referendum. That's fine. That doesn't mean that our legislators need to ignore what we think. So I would like this board to really take a moment to get the community activated in this and let us decide whether we want it or not. There's really no rush to it.
So, John, I know...
And if I may, just one more thing. I know Councilmember McNamara just said that she intends to possibly unwind it.
Sure.
So if there's that much rancor, if there's that much pushback, I don't see the point in moving forward with it when all that you're going to do is potentially sow distrust in our public institutions. And that's really what we have to think about. Like, what is our legacy here? What are we leaving? When you leave office, what will you be known for? And very often, perception is all that matters.
30 seconds.
You can say everything you want about how good a project is. If public perception is not on your side, that's a problem. And so I think, and also as members of the dominant party, we have to think about that as well. Protecting the legacy, protecting our faith in our public institutions, and not disillusioning the populace.
So, John, I'd like to respond a little bit. And you can read the legislative intent to the bill, and you'll get some of the why there. And I know you're also on zoning board, and we did impose a term limit on zoning board. But I think what is 12 years or 16?
14.
14 years.
2 7-year terms
on zoning board. So to me, this is good government. This empowers the voters You're not disqualifying people after 8 years. It is a complicated job. I think I've made that clear. I think we all understand that. You know, I was fortunate, having been supervisor of another town and legislator for 12 years, that had quite a bit of background in government. I mentioned before, if you were searching for a CEO of a large corporation with a lot of responsibility, let's say it's a hospital administrator, you would probably disqualify people with less than 8 years' experience. So by giving the public, you know, more of a choice to keep you if they think that you're doing a good job. So to me, this empowers the voters. This is good government. It provides better continuity. You don't want to see mistakes. Mistakes in government could cost lives.
Yes, but Supervisor, this could have been brought up in the last 8 years. And it was not.
Well,
and so I think
and
what I'm saying to you
there
is
was
that
a choice to not do it in a way that would be self-serving, that would allow me to run for an additional term or two.
I'm
So-
asking you to think about the optics.
Well,
That's what I'm
of course
asking this
thinking
board
about
to
the
do.
optics.
I'm asking this board to think
That's
about
why
how.
it's now, you're saying, well, you could kick it to
So-
another board. They will always,
So if you wanna-
another board, I'm sorry, Cindy, the other, next board, certainly, well, I know, whether we'll vote on this or not, I don't know.
Well,
I'm
I
glad
can't
we're debating.
believe I'm
If you
even
wanna-
I'm
going
glad we're
to say
debating
this,
it,
but
and the next, if we do decide to vote on this, the next board can certainly change it. That's
why
their
should we create
prerogative.
that situation?
But you're in an unusual circumstance where you have two term-limited people,
Understood.
and another person who has no intention of running for an office. If now is probably the best time to really debate this and decide what is in
But
the
you're
best.
not debating it.
Debate
Not
it.
debating
Well,
it.
we're debating it.
You're
To
not debating
decide
it.
what is in the best interest
Well, we're in
of
a
this
public hearing
community.
right now.
No,
so
I understand.
We
have a
haven't
public
really
hearing.
discussed
We
it in
have
public.
Right.
a limited number of people from our community out to speak about these things, and this is not representative of our entire community. And there has been no outreach. There's been no education. Half of the town of Southampton probably doesn't even know how many people read the public hearing notices in the back of the Southampton Press.
The question
honestly.
is, what is in the best
So
interest of this community? In the
I
long term,
understand that.
moving
You
forward.
saying that that's what's in the best interest of the community.
Moving forward, what is
is
in
not
the
the
best
sole.
interest?
It's
Having
that's
an
not the
8-year
end all
limit
be
or
all.
having a 12-year limit, which is better for the town of Southampton? That
I
is the
don't
question.
know.
I'm telling
That's
you,
the
based
answer
on
is,
my
I don't
experience,
know.
I think 12 would better serve the community. Now, people are going to disagree with that. And I'm
right.
certainly going to listen to those comments, and,
Right.
ultimately, we may vote on this. I don't know. Councilwoman McNamara.
I just have to say the optics of it is there has yet to be a single member of the public to say they support this, but every person that has gotten up here to say why they don't support it, you have told them why they're wrong.
And it is.
That's the
I respond to
optics.
this resolution, and I can say why I put it forward.
You can, but when you
I'm
argue
not
with every
saying that
person that's
anybody's
telling you
wrong,
why they
but
don't
I
support
can
it.
But
disagree.
Supervisor, what I'm asking you to do is look at what's going on in the room right now.
Mm-hmm.
What's happening right now. And I think that's what you're losing
Well,
sight
you know
of.
me, John. I've always kept an open
I
mind.
know you very
An
well.
open mind, but I'm going to do what I think ultimately
I-
is in the best interest of
I
the community.
opened my discussion.
Regardless
because
of what they want.
I don't doubt that you're doing what you think is right, but I'm asking you to think about and look in this room and listen to these people and what they're saying to you. And so sometimes we have to put aside what we want to do because of the way it looks. I do it all the time in my
I will certainly
business.
take your comments into consideration.
I would hope you do. Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think this is an important debate to have, so, all right.
So if I could jump in there, because Mr. Leonard hit on something that's pressing for me. There's things in our government that are even weirder than this. I mean, we have 5 trustees that run every 2 years instead of staggered terms. We have, other things that really could be corrected, and we're worried about a term limit. For me personally, the fact, I know I didn't get reelected, I'm not coming back in January, but I plan on running again. So if I'm lucky enough to come back again, I feel that in good faith, I would have to abstain from voting for this because it could affect me down the road. And just like I didn't vote on the overlay district, I wouldn't vote on, overturning fees for organizations that I had been connected to in the past. I will definitely abstain from this. I don't feel that we should be voting for us. And Tommy John, I commend you on saying that you will not run again. And we've had this discussion for quite a while, and that was my big holdup. that this whole extension of term should in no way affect anybody that's voting on it. So, and I agree, you know, the weirdest thing is 2 years as supervisor, you cannot get up to speed in 2 years. I mean, it's been possible. I feel sorry for Mrs.
You're
Moore coming
constantly running.
because,
You're
yeah,
constantly
you're gonna be running right away and, you know, it's gonna be a tough
I mean,
road.
it probably should be a 4-year term, but that would have to go to the ballot. That would have to go on the ballot.
So thank you for that, John. I feel the same. I couldn't vote on this.
You know, and it would affect, like, you know, should you run again in 2 years and get on, you'd be running, without this, you're running for, you'll only be able to serve 1 term.
Exactly, and that's probably where I would end it too.
Yeah. All right, so, Kristen Millenhouse next.
Civil discourse, right? On a lighter note, I want to say on the drive here, the village looks rocking with all the lights. It looks amazing. Okay, so I really thought about this because I understand the perspective of continuity. Okay, we get in a groove, projects take a long time, things like that. But I think what always comes back, and I have not been involved with local government much. The BES issue brought me in, as you know, and I've been sadly here ever since. But what happens is I'm seeing that there's always something with process and a lack of public involvement. Some of what you were saying about, you know, educating the people. From what my response from my friends and family when we discuss it is a lot of people are saying, no, absolutely not. I don't know if that's because they're feeling the effects of some of the decisions that were made in the last few years. You know, maybe there's a bad taste in the mouth. BES has totally really rocked our local community. And you have a lot of power. You're 5 people, but you hold a lot of power. You're voting on enormous issues that affect a very large amount of people, as you know. And so some of the reasons why I think it would be good to keep it as is I feel that when there are limits, people are more responsive to their constituents. They're working harder to get in touch with those constituents. I feel like it puts a check on power, which is important. And I think if you're focusing on the process of governing rather than readying for yet another election, you'll get the job done better. I think also opportunities for new leadership. I'm frankly very excited to have a Mike Iaselli coming on board. I thought his ideas were very optimistic about, you know, the comprehensive plan being very antiquated, and let's do something about that. So you have energy that comes to that is, you know, whether Cindy or Maria were supervisor, I think we'd have been in great shape either way. So I think we have to sometimes pass the baton, and maybe in that passing of the baton, coach a little bit so the supervisor role is easier to achieve. I'm not saying stay forever, but maybe there are things you can do about that. But I think as it is great. I really am not for it being extended, especially at this time. I think it really needs more discussion.
All right, thank you, Kristen.
Yeah, sure.
All right, Gail Lombardi.
So I don't want to beat the horse that, you know, why are you doing this now conversation, because I can't agree more. No one's indispensable. No one's not replaceable. And if anybody thinks they are, I think they need a psychiatrist. So that being said, the term limits are not really 8 to 12, it's 16 to 24, right? Because, Jay, you could run for a council person seat. Nothing stops you. John Bouvier could have ran for your seat. So it's really 24 years. It is a generation. A person could be on this board for literally a generation. People could have babies, and their babies will have the same people on the board. So that is a problem. I foiled your backup, and it seems to stem from a Bethlehem study done, I think, in 2012. And so what you put forth in your resolution is all the things, all the reasons why you shouldn't have term limits. In that same study, they had the arguments for term limits. The first argument was we should have term limits, and you're going to have to give me a couple of extra minutes with the vision loss. Avoid incumbency, which promotes more spending and bureaucracy. That was their first thing. Second reason why you should have term limits, because it increases the rate of competitive elections. Third reason, create greater opportunities to serve on public office and allows more minorities and women to enter the political sphere. 4, curb the influence of lobbyists. 5, it produces a citizens' legislature of more ordinary people rather than professional politicians. How long, Jay, are you in public office? I'm just curious. Some
24 years in elected office.
There you go.
Consecutive.
Since term limits, representatives would be more in harmony with public opinion and with their district's constituents, and I'll give a shout out to both Rick and actually Tommy John. You are in touch with your peeps in Sag Harbor, as well as Cindy and Rick, I have to say. We disagree on things, but that's not one of them. And promotes, as Chrissy said, fresh ideas and minimizes, I typed it big. I'm going to have to skip it because I can't see it. Okay, so I didn't do my research on the referendum myself. I mean, I'm not a trained attorney, but it's not rocket science. I did go through. I do understand it. To your point, Jay, it's giving us, the way I understand the theory behind it, it's actually enhancing the public's view, which is what you're saying. It's giving us more choices. However, the fact that it's giving us more choices, there's other parts to it. And as Cindy said, in the town of Southampton, the choice is really governed sometimes by the politics behind it and the committees. I'm excited, as Chrissy said, to have some new blood on the board. I don't think this is the right time. And in that study, in the Bethlehem study, it wasn't just about term limits. And I don't think, personal opinion, I don't think the supervisor should be 2 years, because by the time you get office, you start to campaign again. You're constantly in campaign mode. So that study actually it was 3-pronged. It was term limits, it was terms going from 2 to 4 years, and it was districting. They called it wards. And that's something else. I think Michael brought that up at the, I'm sorry, Michael, for using your first name, but I'm afraid I'm going to mispronounce your last name. So, but he brought that up at the civic debate. And you know what? This is a broader conversation. John mentioned this. It's a broader conversation that we need to have as a group, not in the 11th hour of you guys leaving office. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Gil. All right, next up, Bill William Kearns.
Good evening, Supervisor and Town Board members. Happy holidays. I have a philosophical question that I've always had about term limits. And I personally believe, I don't know if I'm in favor of term limits, but I personally believe that they actually eradicate the power of our vote. I think term limits tell us that our vote is of value, but only to a point. There are times when your vote has no value. There are times when your vote doesn't count. There are times when you cannot vote. This is what term limits offer us, I believe. By lengthening term limits, government by the people becomes government by elected officials, not the people. Term limits, in my opinion, tell the voter that they're not smart enough to decide who represents them. The town board with this legislation will do that for you. And that, to me, is not good. I don't believe, despite what we've heard tonight, that as a board you have the authority to do that. You can't decide your own political fate. Only the voters can. If the elected official is a bum, vote him or her out of office. If they're effective, let them stay. The burden becomes that of the voter. It becomes our responsibility to stay abreast of the workings of government. Tonight's showing tells us that the Southampton voter is up to that challenge. We care. Your thinking, Supervisor, is that the present 8-year term limits disrupt career paths of active candidates Extending term limits to 12 years will do the same. A candidate or elected official knows what restrictions they have on serving. 8 or 12 years will disrupt the career path on either end, at the beginning or at the end, achieving nothing. And that will actually discourage strong candidates from entering the fray. What happens if, we're also functioning here that the people that we elect to offices are not good. Suppose we have a great candidate or a great supervisor or a great town board. Let them stay until the voters vote them out. You know, what about the accumulated knowledge of a very strong representative that person amasses over 8 years? That gets thrown to the wayside with this proposal. Again, if they're good, let the voters decide. If they're bad, let the voters decide that too. Finally, I believe if the term limits proposal is moved forward, present board members must be ineligible to extend their terms if they have reached their limit. Otherwise, this legislation will be self-serving as well as ethically unsound. Thank you.
Yeah, so before you go, I just want to, because it seems like you're, arguing there should be no term limits at all.
I don't know what I'm arguing.
Yeah, so.
I don't know what I'm arguing. Because I'm not,
That the voters should be able to pick who they want to represent them,
absolutely.
and that's the ultimate powers that the ballot bonds. But what's being proposed here, because we already have an 8-year term limit, is to make a 12-year term limit, which would give the voters a little bit more chance to pick people.
Right.
But after 12 years, then they're done. So is it better or worse than what we have? Like, I'm not really sure.
It's the same. It's the same. I mean, what if you have a good candidate or a good representative, let the voters decide whether they should stay in office.
That would be no term limit.
Right. Right. And you know, if as was presented tonight, if we have 90% or whatever the number is of the counties in the state,
99%.
99%, no term limits. Why are we going from 8 to 12? Why not look at that as a possibility?
So you'd prefer to see no term limit at all?
I think philosophically, yes. But I think there is some merit to the case that, you know, term limits might have something. We have to discuss it further as a town, as the voters.
Yeah, I believe there's a role for term limits. So the question is, what is the right length? And why should Southampton be so different than everywhere else that has term limits? And you know, eight's a short amount of time.
8's a short amount of time. A short amount of time. Once you get elected as a supervisor, the next day you start your campaign again, which is troublesome to me. But I also think that we have the power to vote somebody in, and we should not. That should not be compromised. Term limits compromise that. So I'm not sure where I am.
Okay.
But I just threw this out here, my opinion out here, because I think that. You know, this is a very, very important issue. I can't believe it can't be voted on in a referendum. It's ridiculous, you know. But and you say this will empower the voter. I say it takes away from the voters' power.
Because there's a term limit, you say that. So if you had no term limits, it would be fully empowering of the.
Yeah.
But I'd have to argue then that 12 years would be slightly more empowering than 8, because you'd have a longer period by which you can pick whether you think somebody should stay or not.
That might be true, but again, you're operating from the premise that the person in power is not a good representative. What about if somebody's good? Let them stay. Let the voters vote them back in. If they're effective, if they're making the town a better place, let them stay.
But you don't get that choice now. If you have somebody who's good, you want them to stay.
Right.
You can't.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That's it for cards. We'll go online, but there may be some people who didn't fill out cards. Michael, you want to say something? Congratulations, by the way. You and
Thank you.
Bill Bell,
Thank you very much,
both
Supervisor.
incoming.
Thank you, and thank you to the town board. Good evening, Councilmember-elect Michael Iacilli. I just, I wanted to come here. First of all, I respect so many of you for your service to our community, and I do, as John Leonard mentioned, I do truly believe that you're putting this forward because you believe it is in the best interest of the people of Southampton. You mentioned during the discussion that The reason why it's not a referendum because the length of term hasn't been triggered. So one of the things that I've heard from a lot of folks is that they'd like to see maybe possibly the supervisor term, length of term from 2 years to 4 years. If we did that, then perhaps then it could go to a referendum and then the people can actually vote on this. I, like John Leonard, also believe that the people really have to have a say here, and this isn't enough time. This one night where not a lot of folks have attended is not enough. I'd like to see more engagement from the public. I do think that there's a reasonable debate to be had. I personally don't believe that extending the term limits is good for the people of Southampton. But what I do think is that we need more time. And I would support a tabling motion. Or what I would do is I would seek a way to find out how to trigger a referendum legally so that there could be a vote by the people of Southampton. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, anyone else from Town Hall? Yeah. Myron?
I did submit a card.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
I saw it, yes.
The yellow card.
Yeah.
Right here.
Oh, it never made it all the way to the.
So I think you just had a majority of the incoming board say they don't support this.
Good evening, my name is Myron Holtz, and I'd say fortunately, rather than unfortunately, I am part of the continuing bureaucracy. Despite the political appointees that a governor appoints, or those who are elected by the party to run for election, I served the state government in New York for 35 years, retiring as a deputy commissioner, working my way up through the ranks, starting as a temporary statistician in 1961. And then I worked for the federal government for 22 years, working for the Department of Homeland Security and helping people through the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And I believe there is a tremendous value in the permanent government, in the civil servants, rather than the political appointees who head the departments and want to, so to speak, drain the swamp. Because the people who are the permanent government have history, and they know what goes on and why things happen. And if you can't learn from your past mistakes, then you're going to fail. So another thing that I've learned in government is no good deed shall go unpunished. So no matter how hard you try and you think you're doing the right thing, sometimes you just can't win. But the thing that sort of concerned me is I'm against this proposal, and I went back and researched the 1994 law and what was changed. And it was very simple. They changed it from any person who has served as supervisor of the town or board of the town of Southampton for 4 consecutive 2-year terms shall be ineligible to serve as supervisor for the next term. And they changed it to say now that any person who has served as supervisor of the town board of the town of Southampton for a total of 8 years shall be ineligible to serve as supervisor for any future term. And that's the term limited of the 8 years. And I believe that when they passed that resolution, they said, in adopting local law number 20 of 1994, the town board found that a representative government based upon competitive elections would be fostered more effectively by establishing term limits for local representatives. So that being given, they put it before the voters, and the voters
That language was
endorsed.
not put before the voters. That was in the
That was in the resolution.
That was in the legislative intent of the
Yes,
resolution
that was
that
in
they
the
passed
legislative intent.
3-1.
Right.
Okay.
But the question is, and I was not aware, I thought when the council was speaking before, she said it was mandatory. Now, it was not mandatory, she said. So if it's not mandatory, was it permissive? And then I heard in another case, she said that it was not permissive, so that you could not have a public referendum. But there are other ways to have a public referendum than in the voting booth. And that's part of what Mr. Leonard said about getting the word out to the community. And the thing that I find particularly striking is in the summary of the proposed law that we're going to hear, or that we're working on today, recognizing the value of term limits, but finding that a term limit of 8 years is particularly restrictive. That's a choice of somebody's word. What does particularly restrictive mean? The town board of the town of Southampton seeks to change the total eligible term of the supervisor and town council members from 8 years to 12 years. I think it would be significant or important for us to understand what was meant by the term particularly restrictive in the minds of those who voted for this particular resolution.
Certainly across New York State, it's unusually restrictive. 99.5% of the towns have either no term limit or longer term limits than that. So it's particularly restrictive if you're going to look across the state.
Okay, but how is it applicable here? What has it prevented us in the town of Southampton from seeing or believing or?
It's a judgment call.
Well, you know, you've had some council people, you know, Chris Nuzzi who turned out, Christine Scalera, Nancy Grabowski. There's people who might have sought additional terms had they had the opportunity. They were good public servants. You know, you may feel that that's the right time. 8 years is enough.
Or
That's-
maybe pass a resolution eliminating term limits if it gives the voters an opportunity to decide who will be governing them and who will be passing the resolutions that govern how they live.
That's, in essence, is the debate.
Well-
No term limits, 8-year term limits, or something in between.
But then the question would be whether the voters would be allowed to vote or permitted to vote on elimination of term limits altogether. I don't know. Maybe Mr. Burke can have that researched.
I think Kathleen Murray's already weighed in on that, and she's 100% correct.
But no, in other words, the voters would not have an opportunity to vote on whether or not to eliminate term limits?
So, to eliminate term limits?
Yes.
No, I don't think so, no.
Well,
Because
then we
again,
would be
that's-
conforming with
that's
99% of the
qualifications
towns.
Right,
position.
but I am not proposing that.
No.
Somebody else can propose that.
And some would argue that would empower the voters more. I mean, that's the
Yes.
other side of what we're
Yes,
not
I agree,
hearing.
but the
That's-
voters would have more of an opportunity to have input as witnessed here. So, thank you.
Voters
for
would
allowing-
have the opportunity to have input in elections.
Yes.
Greater input. That's
If
kind
they're
of
aware,
how I look at it.
if they're aware of how people voted, and then it becomes a political issue as to, well, I'm not in favor of him because he voted for term limits, or I'm not in favor of him because he voted against term limits,
I suppose
rather
that's
than
part of it.
what they stand
You know,
for.
I remember Pat Vecchio out in Smithtown, who did, 40-plus years as town supervisor? You know, the job is somewhat limiting in itself, right?
I understand that.
You know, that's why right now you had, you know, the East Hampton supervisor, he wasn't term limited, he chose not to run. The Riverhead supervisor chose not to run. The Southold supervisor chose not to run.
Well-
I think any of them would have gotten reelected.
Well, the question is whether or not their medical history would have permitted them to stay, or would they need psychiatric care to run again? So, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so, anyone else from town hall? All right, let's go online.
Bridget, did you want to speak? No.
So, make sure you click the raise hand icon if you wish to be heard, and Charles will bring you in.
She's already in.
And just identify yourself, and then we'll get started.
You're up, Lorraine.
Lorraine, you're first.
Hi, how you doing? Good evening, everybody. I just also would like to voice my objection to extending the term limits at this time to 12 years. I think that if a president can be limited to 8 years, then so can the town, the small community. I think it was mentioned earlier that no term limits for other government positions. However, this no limits does promote career politicians and allows the party machine to continue without finding new blood and allowing the voters to actually vote for who they want to serve. And yes, long-term town projects do take time, and that knowledge is not lost. Hopefully, you all are able to pass that on what projects you are working on, and that passes to the next board. That's the public service and duty that is owed. So yes, I agree, no extension of term limits at this time, and I also agree with Ms. Dianelli to find a way to allow more public feedback and education to the public would be beneficial, and also to find another way to pass this besides by people. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Lorraine. Charles, anyone else?
No other hands.
Oh, okay. Okay, so adjourn it the next day? You want to-
We could adjourn it, but I think Councilwoman McNamara brings up a good point, that 3 people who are going to be on the next board have voiced opposition, and I certainly wouldn't want to waste the public's time and time of this board debating this further and then kind of tripping something because you're going to,
I'm gonna put a public hearing
That's
up.
going to be one of the first things that we get, that gets brought up in the new administration, and, you know, that'll be a contentious issue and will most likely get overturned in
Possibly,
January.
or maybe when the
you know,
new town board reviews all the facts and,
So,
you know, looks at some of the same, you know, looks at other towns and what makes sense for the community.
So there it is.
You know?
So why not
Hey,
let us
so,
carry on with
you know
that and
what?
have the conversation?
I mean, I like President Bartlett. Was he ever president? You know, he said we do have term limits. They're called elections. And, you know, my particular stance on this is that term limits do limit the power of the people. And I understand, you know, for the very same reason that many of you were stating up here at the podium, you know, the power of the people. But they're elected. If a supervisor serves 12 years, that's 6 elections. Those things are not easy. And the same thing with council people. That would be, you know, their first election and then 2 re-elections. And we know that those are no walk in the park. You have to go to the people for good reason and, you know, ask to, you know, be on the dais. And it empowers the people. And so that is my position. That's why I was supporting this. But what I don't want to do is to see the next town board get, you know, blown up right, you know, from the outset on a, you know, an issue like this. So, I mean, that's
As far as blowing up the next town board, my feeling is if you're not going to let this go to a public, if it can't go to a public referendum, we cannot.
It can't. We can't.
So,
find
in
a
my
way.
opinion, the
We
people
can't.
that vote on it should be held accountable at the voting booth by the people. Because I haven't heard anybody yet that said, this is great, this is a good idea, go ahead with it. I've heard 2 people say they're not sure what we should do, and the rest have said flat out no. So there is no overwhelming, you know, call from the people, please extend this to 12 years. I understand, Supervisor, your point to, you know, wanting to give people more time on the board, and I get that. But until it's truly, and as far as disenfranchising the voters, when you have party leaders deciding who is on the ballot and who is not on the ballot,
That's
then we
an
can have this
entirely different
conversation.
issue.
No, then we can
That-
have this conversation
I mean-
because until you can have,
That's
you
gonna
can argue it
remain
all I can.
whether
but
we
if,
do this or
but
not.
if somebody has a deal made where there's nobody running against them, the people don't have a choice. Even if that is the worst elected official on record and nobody likes them, a deal was made, you have no choice. There is nobody running against them. They can vote for themselves and they can stay on.
And I have to say, Councilwoman, that clouds the issue. Really, that is going to be in place whether we extend term limits or not.
But in this instance, 8 years, you're done, regardless.
I know, and that takes away the power of the people, in my view. Now, and I understand people disagree with me. I get it. You know.
You know, first, Cindy, I think you're referring to me in my last election when you say.
No one ran against you.
Nobody ran against me, but there wasn't a deal. That was a choice.
I'm not saying there was a deal, but there was
That's
nobody
not
ran
fair.
against
So
you.
maybe they decided, you know, that the public
Maybe they
was
chose
going
they
to
didn't have
reelect
enough
me,
money
and they
to
didn't
run
wanna
against
spend
you.
all the energy on running against me and not winning because
It's a lot of money to run.
It is, and you know, maybe the public still, you know, had some confidence in my ability to run the town, and so that was a choice. It wasn't a deal. And I'm a little bit concerned with your logic. Say, give it to the next town board. Rick won't be here, but saying he wouldn't vote this year because it, you know, could be seen as, you know, helping himself in the future. You might be in the same position saying, well, I could run again. This would give me 2 more terms and town board, so maybe I can't vote on it. And then you got 2 new people, 3 new people.
Oh, I'll vote on it and I'll vote no.
You got Tommy John here, but then you'll have 2 other people who might go, I think they're not going to vote on it because it might be seen as self-serving. You got a board that can't vote on it. This may be the only time
so here's
to
the
really.
problem.
Hold on, please don't interrupt me. This may be the only time to seriously debate this issue, and you know.
You
that's
haven't
what
you
we're doing.
haven't allowed time for the debate to happen.
Oh, good. Well, then maybe we should adjourn the hearing to the next hearing date, and we'll allow additional time for the
No,
debate.
I'm talking about truly going out and engaging the public and going to CACs and speaking to people in communities and asking them if they would like term limits and explain to them your logic.
Well, you've already
but you
sounded
haven't
like-
left time for that.
Yeah, you've already decided that you're going to undo it if it gets done
No,
next
no,
time.
no. I have said I'm
And-
going to put it to the next board who will vote on it and be held accountable at the voting booth. If 100 residents come out and
Right,
say,
but you-
we don't want you to do this, and you do it anyway, we can vote you out. Right now, they don't have that choice.
Right, but you're doing basically the same thing. You're saying you're going to poll the public hearing to go from 12 to 8, which is I'm polling a public hearing to go from 8 to 12.
And you're more than
So
welcome
it-
to do that.
Okay, thank you.
But I haven't
That's
heard
what
from
we're
a single resident that supports it.
I
Well,
have.
you
They're
heard-
not here.
Yeah,
But-
and you've heard from some people who don't think
You know.
there should be any term limits.
They weren't sure what they thought should happen.
No, seriously,
No, it's
I
good,
heard
but-
from plenty of people who really, frankly, don't care. You know, they were like, okay, you know, we still get to vote for them? All right, I'll do that. No, I'll wait.
So what, what's the right fit? What's the
The right
right
fit is at
lang-
least-
most of the towns, they have no term limits. Those that do
Yeah.
have 12-year term limits, we're this anomaly, with the 8-year term limits. It's good for Southampton, some people think. Nobody else who 12-year term limits are trying to make them 8-year term limits, and doesn't seem like anybody else is trying to go for term limits, and when they do, it seems that they're at 12 years, not 8 years, but.
So Jay, I mean, the critical thing here, we can keep this open, but, I mean, we'll see if, it actually gets on the agenda to vote. I mean, we've just heard of a majority of the next town board speak, so.
Mhm.
Again, I don't, this board has other work to do.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I'll make a motion to adjourn the public hearing, allow for some more public input. To what's the next date? December 12th? is it?
Right before Christmas.
Yes, December 12th.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to adjourn to December 12th. Next meeting, okay. So do we have a second?
Second?
Second by Councilman Scavone. All in favor?
Aye.
No,
So you want to close it now?
I would like to close.
I believe it just passed.
So, yeah, we did.
Rick, what was your vote?
Yeah, I want to hear from the public again. I'm fine with that.
You want to have more input? Okay, so Councilwoman McNamara is opposed to adjourning it, and 3 are in favor of adjourning it to the 12th. It would be nice if Councilman Bouvier would be able to participate in the hearing too, so. Okay, so that's it for public hearings. We're gonna move on to public portion. I have a number of cards for public portion. We'll start with Eileen McFellen.
I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight and giving us your opinion. I
Yeah, thank
appreciate
you
it.
all for coming out. All right,
Logan.
welcome back. Is it McFellen, right?
McFellen, you got it
Yes,
right.
I'm sorry about that.
Um,
See, it takes 8 years just to learn how to pronounce somebody's
Not a
name.
problem. I haven't been here for 8 years. It took me until I retired before I could get involved. I'm going to suggest a few things, because I have 3 minutes.
Yes.
Okay. So one is the speaker for this microphone here? Where is the speaker to this? Does
In the
anybody know?
back of the room.
In the back of the room? Okay, so I'm going to suggest that you find money in a budget to fix your speaker system. I'm not the oldest here, I'm not the youngest. I never come here without straining to hear. So I would imagine many other people have difficulty hearing. And some people speak quieter than others. So if you can find some way, or the next board can be suggested, that they fine-tune the speaker system, it would be appreciated.
Thank you actually for bringing that to our attention,
I
because,
did a few months ago, and it didn't get any better, so.
okay,
Anyway, I'm proposing a suggestion that maybe you could put out an information card that is asked to be sent back to all of the voters in the town on what you're talking about. Just to say, what would you prefer? No term limits, certain term limits, whatever the changes that could be applicable, and have a time limit where it has to come back. I know it costs time, money to do it, but not a lot of time to get it done. And a time limit to have it returned. Just based on that opinion, at least then you would maybe know where to go, that the town would like to have it be done.
it would be nice if you can list the pros and cons of each too. So people can at least understand the thought process. What are some of the arguments for keeping it at 8? What are some of the arguments for making it 12? What are some of the arguments for getting rid of it completely? So,
Sure.
people can consider the different points
The
of view.
rip-off card to go back. with a response. My question is, for people who work for the town, do all positions have to be, somebody has taken a civil service test or has some kind of degree, or what are the qualifications to work for the town?
So
Depends on the
Unless they're
position.
elected.
It dep- yeah,
30
it dep-
seconds.
It depends, well, she's asking a question, so we're gonna extend the time a little bit. There are lots of different types of positions. There are lots of civil service positions that are, you have to take a civil service test, you have to meet certain pre-qualifications, prerequisite qualifications. Sometimes it's a college degree, sometimes it's related experience. There are some positions that, you don't need anything, that it's just like an exempt position. The town can hire whoever they want for that position, like a legislative aide. So those typically are not in this bargaining unit, CSEA, they're outside of that bargaining unit, and they don't have the same protections as you might have if you're within, the union. So I hope I'm answering your question, but there are some jobs that have very difficult prerequisites.
But some that have almost no qualifications,
So, yeah.
other
Some
than
just-
maybe experience.
There's many, most have at least a high school
Yeah,
diploma.
high school degree.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
If you look at the Suffolk County Civil Service list, you'll get more information.
And I, encourage, if people are watching this and are interested in working in government, we have a great human resources department, and come in, bring us your resume. We're always looking for people to fill different positions. It's getting harder and harder with the high cost of living in the area to find qualified people. But if you're interested in a job or even a career in government, please come see us. Okay, so that's, let me see who's next. Brian Babcock, you're up again.
I don't have anything to hand out this time, but a couple things. You mentioned I'm just going to touch on this really quick. You said it's getting harder to live out here. I would recommend that the next meeting, if it's a 1 o'clock meeting for the adjournment on the last discussion, you move to a night session, because it's already hard enough to get people here. 1 o'clock in the afternoon is going to be a couple people.
We do it hybrid, so you can do it from
My job while I'm driving down the road. That's not going to happen. Anyway, two other important topics. Well, there's three. One was what we touched on already, and two others that I see on the agenda going forward. It's the end of the year, and things are just popping up on the agenda to get pushed forward, and I'm kind of perplexed by it. One was, I saw recently at a work session, the climate action plan that was put forward to the board. I noticed Councilwoman McNamara's response to where did this come from. To me, any council member that hasn't been privy to information and then readily put on the next public hearing seems inappropriate. It lacks transparency, in my opinion. It lacks my respect for the board to not have everybody that has access to this, and I happened to find it. I went down to the annex office in Hampton Bays, and they were gracious enough to give it to me. It was online, so I thanked them for that. But it was a lot to read and to have a public opinion about. I'm sure you're going to hear from a couple other people in the audience that there was quite a bit of problems with the plan, discrepancies. Should be an embarrassment to hand that off to the county and not have a solid groundwork for that to be complete, to be even handed off. So we're going to have a public hearing about it, but before it went to the county, we should have probably tightened that up a little bit. There's no rush to get it done. It's been years since it started, so maybe we should take a little more time here internally before we had handed it off. But here we are, we're doing it. The last thing I'll say is in the last, coming up we're gonna have, I saw again in the work session, if you didn't watch the last election, since we're talking about elections tonight, it was interesting, to say the least. There was quite a bit of talk about a gentleman who spent quite a bit of money to get the next mayor, the next supervisor in here. That person will be taking the helm, and in my opinion, should not be voting on anything coming forward to this board in reference to the potential condominiums they want to put, I guess, on the Bridge Golf Course. So that seems to me to be an extreme conflict of interest. I'm just throwing it out there to get it on the record. Jay, you've been around a while. We've worked together on a lot of plans. You know it takes a long time to get things done. There's no reason to be putting some of these things through now. Nobody's going to be able to come here between now and Christmas. They're all working 2-3 jobs. Can't come down here and talk to you about our issues that are going on within the town board to be pushing this through with the majority. So I would ask that you table some of these things for the next board that's coming in here, which is going to be different. And I would also ask that the next supervisor take a look at the money that was put forward to get her in there and disqualify herself on anything in reference to the owner of the Bridge Golf Course. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so Kristen Millenhausen is next.
So, let's see. So I came here on the 14th after hearing the work session, and I had concerns about the climate action because I hadn't read it yet. Remember, I only accessed the survey and I accessed the video. Okay, so from those two pieces of information, I was up in arms because I felt like it was inadequate. And I misquoted the town population. It's actually almost 70,000. So if we look at that number, we really have a very inadequate survey. So
That's just the year-round population, right? The summer population even.
it's even more. It's even more.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to that point, I did get a chance to read all 98 pages. I had some concerns about the plan. I actually think it's great to have a climate action plan. So I think it's a great endeavor. And I don't think that anyone is denouncing that. I just really want to get that on the table. The flow chart on page 19 of the steps, it goes into the survey. There was only one survey. I thought maybe there were more surveys and there was only one online, but I foiled it. There was only one. And this is just inadequate. Again, it was not bilingual. This is not appropriate. The public workshop was also very sparse and inadequate. And
You might have to step a little bit away from the mic. It's popping here.
Had some
That's fine.
data that was, obviously prior to the best, things going on. So I think one thing I learned from the best is that when we came to the town, at first there was like, everyone in the community was like, there's no way you're going to ever include that in the moratorium. There's a lot going on, right? We learned a lot from it. I think it kind of showed how, when the community did come together and you guys listened, and it actually was a fruitful pause. Okay, we know it's not over. We know there's more work to do. We've inquired about task forces. But when we see this plan kind of going ahead when I have so many questions about the plan and you want to vote on it before the end of the year, it's again, inappropriate. We have a lot of people in the community that are still trying to read it, still have questions about it. We have a lot of questions about the citations, the sourcing of the information, the sustainability folks, there's a lot of grammatical errors in this plan. So I think that what I did was I went page by page and I have a whole list of things that I have questions about. Aggregate energy, is that another BAS? We need to really clear up a lot of things before this moves forward. And I think that due diligence with the community is very important. I'm not sure of what the contract says with the person who researched all of this, but I'm sure they're like the best. It said, oh, we've gotten community input, and there wasn't. So a less than 400 person survey is inadequate. That's right at step one, right there. And have you thoroughly read this plan? I'm asking.
I have, yeah.
Okay. Do you have questions or concerns about the draft?
In due time, I will go over those questions, yeah.
Yeah, there's a work session right Thursday on this. I will diligently watch. But that work session will then bring us to what, December 12th? Again, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I again have to take another day off, half a day off from work, which I intend to do because this is important to me. But there are a lot of folks that can't, a lot of folks that couldn't come out tonight. So again, you know, we as you know, the Civic has presented the material, not to say vote against this or hoot and holler about it, but just to let you know this is out there, and they were blown away by this 98-page plan. So we do need to be better at process, because I think when people feel blindsided, it works against the progression of the plan.
All right, well, thank you. Thanks for
Sure.
getting involved with that.
Sure.
All right, Gail Lombardi, you're next.
Okay, to follow up with Chrissy, though, and actually, Mr. Babcock, this is not about the climate action plan. This is to do with Resolution 2023-1419, having a public hearing on Thursday, December 21st at 1 o'clock. Are you kidding me? About the community housing fund project plan that has not been vetted with the community. You had a work session just last week. I haven't gotten a chance to watch it. None of this has been vetted with the community. And you're approving a public hearing on Thursday, December 21st at 1 p.m. The plan is not even on the town website, to the best of my knowledge. I went to go look for it. And you expect us to look at the action plan, without really any community interaction on this. You approved the community plan in time before you got the referendum to get the extra money. And that plan was poorly conceived and it's vague. It didn't have community input. We had those, and Cindy wasn't on the board at the time, you had those little Zoom meetings. East Quogue had 20 people. Hampton Bays had 20 people on the Zoom. Half the people didn't even know what was going on. You did a very robust survey and specifically removed it as part of the plan because it probably didn't support the plan. You also kicked the SECRA can down the road on that. And where's the environmental review on any of this? Where is it? You kicked it down the road on the plan, so it's got to be now. When is it? When are you going to actually look at the town's traffic and what the town looks like and all the things that you're supposed to be doing as leaders and not, career politicians? The second thing is that, to follow up with, this is a rhetorical question, to follow what Eileen said, what are the qualifications? I'm wondering what the qualifications for the town manager is going to be. Is that going to be like a term limited out town council person, town supervisor? But that was rhetorical and snarky. The next thing is town resolution, 1386, that you are approving $34,000 to do an aerial of the downtown, the fake development for 160 housing units, and I call it Schneidermanville. Like a pre-marketing for development yet to happen on the zoning with, I call it historical concepts. Again, going to the same well for the same people. And to Chrissy's point, you did that survey in bilingual, you got 38 Spanish responses. That is not representative of the Hampton Bays community. And to move forward on a plan where the renderings or the whiting of downtown is a problem. Let's see who really wants what downtown. There was one other thing, which was the cannabis. You promised us we weren't going to be the cannabis capital of New York, and you had 15 applications on this week's agenda, 3 of which are in Hampton Bays, which is one is, I don't know, there's one address that is not a real address, 89 West Montauk Highway, but it's 93 West Montauk Highway, which I think is the real address, which is that old North Fork Bank. And then there's, I think, like 246. And I looked up, I traced back, followed the money, I traced back where the 93 West Montauk Highway goes to. The company is High Speed Herb, I guess, High Speed Herb. It traces back to New Jersey. So it's not like some local person is opening a business in our community. Some other person is capitalizing on your decision not to opt out. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. So just Gail, there's no proposal to create a town manager. I'm not sure where that came from. We had it.
You said it 3 times.
We don't
have a town manager.
We don't have a town manager. We had one. We had a position called General Services Administrator. He retired and we eliminated the town manager position. So we're not creating it. We got rid of it. So I'm just not sure where that comes from. And in terms of dispensaries, there are 9 operating dispensaries currently. They're all at the Shinnecock Reservation. 9 of them. So, but there is not a single one elsewhere. There's people who want to open them, and they have to get licenses and locations that meet, and whether there'll be any is, we don't know. We don't know what the market will support. But right now there are 9, and they're all on the Shinnecock Reservation, not far from Hampton Bays. All right, so that's the only card I have.
I just have to say, I have Margaret Friedlander trying to get into the
Oh.
meeting. She wanted to speak at a prior hearing. We've sent her the link a couple
Okay.
times now. I just think you should give her a chance. I just sent it again.
Okay, so is she online?
I don't know.
No,
Because,
she's not.
But,
do you know which hearing she wanted to speak at?
well, she wanted to speak at the term limits
Okay, well, that
originally, but I
was,
think now she
that was
wants,
adjourned, so that she can speak at,
I understand, but
on the
she's
12th.
also, I think, wanting to speak in public portion, and I just resent it to her again.
all right,
So
so,
we only have 2 people on.
all right, so I just
Maybe
want to
she's
make sure
one
there's
of
no one else, I don't have any other cards. Is there anyone else who wanted to speak in public portion? Who is here in our town hall audience? Okay, so then we're gonna go, Charles, we're gonna go online to our remote viewers, and, you said you had 2?
That is correct.
All right, so, and if you're watching this remotely and wish to be heard, just click that raise hand icon and we'll bring you in. Hopefully in the order that you clicked your raise hand icon. Okay, we want to make sure we can hear you, we can see you. You want to tell us your name?
Yes, hi, good evening. My name is Arlene Hinkemeyer. I'm asking to speak tonight at the Southampton Town Council meeting to express the appreciation of the League of Women Voters of the Hamptons, Shelter Island, and North Fork for Charles Surton of Southampton Town CTD, who is retiring this Thursday, November 30th. As the publicist for the League, I've been working with Charles Surton for 16 years, since 2008, arranging with him and previous CTD personnel, Bruce Nalapinski and Sarah Pleat, for the CTD Channel 22 taping of so many League community information programs. These have included dozens of candidate debates for both primaries and general elections, several running and winning programs where local elected officials offer their experiences and inspiration to high school students on running for office, and many panel discussions on so many topics such as East End health services, agriculture and aquaculture, the role of East End planning and zoning boards, the role of town trustees, the work of town anti-bias task forces, the Shinnecock, recycling issues, water quality issues, interviews with mayors, interviews with East End superintendents of schools, the Community Preservation Fund, and League Suffragists and the state and national leagues' 100th anniversaries in 2019 to 2020. Charles Certain was always dependable, responsible, and a great asset to CTV. We hope he and his musical trio, Certain Moves, will continue to perform locally, and we appreciate greatly all that he's done for the League, the town of Southampton, and the greater East End community, and wish him a happy retirement.
Thank you, Arlene.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
from the League of Women.
I don't know if you can hear Charles, but he's saying thank you too, and he got a free advertisement for his band, it's for his trio, which is good. But
Okay.
but thank you, Arlene.
All
We we will miss Charles too. Of that, I'm certain, though he's really certain. So
Right, okay.
Charles.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So how do I end this?
Charles can get you out.
All right. Charles, you got another one? And, somebody else from your fan club there?
Actually, I have no more hands.
All right. Okay. So, and again, there's nobody else at
No,
town.
she's emailing me, she's getting a message that says, our live stream is temporarily incompatible with Google Chrome. Please access our site streams
Because
via.
she's trying to get on the portal.
Okay.
That's what the portal says.
Okay, so.
So she's gotta go onto the,
She's clicking the wrong link, is that what you're saying?
she's not,
That is correct.
she's not on the
Okay.
Zoom link.
All right.
Zoom
Let me
link.
try this one more time.
All right. So I won't close public portion quite yet.
Please click
What are you here for?
the
Are you here for a resolution?
Yeah.
the video conferencing.
Which
link?
ones we can at least
I
take
can't
it out of
see
order?
it anymore.
Yep. Do you know the number?
Since one is 2023-1407. It's on page 31.
But we're not there yet.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm just,
Yeah. I said we're not there yet.
No, we're just
still
getting
in
prepared.
public.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's on page 31. Yeah.
No, I know, I was responding to
Right, right.
and the other one is the following.
And the following one. Is there anyone else waiting on a particular resolution?
And
No?
the next one is 2023-1408. So it's the secret aspect and then
And they're one after the other, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're one after the other. So we can take them both out of order when we get there. And nobody else wants anything else taken out of order. All right. So,
I
Jim,
sent
just-
an email, so.
so Jim, just as we've never done this, but I think can be done. We could have a motion to reopen public portion when she gets on and.
I can't guarantee you that's gonna happen. I
Yeah.
just sent her an email,
Right.
like, she just needs to
Okay.
click the right link.
The matter was adjourned to the next matter anyway, so, board meeting.
So, I mean, it is,
Yeah,
we
we
can, you can do a public portion at the end of a meeting too, where you can reopen public portion
If you think,
if,
Charles can tell us if.
Does
you
anyone
want.
have her phone number? Like, just
No.
call her up.
and I'm not, if I did, I'm not texting her.
Oh, and Janice, what
I have
resolution
mine.
are you here for?
Good evening.
Well, we're
I'm
not
here
there yet,
for
but-
1407 and 1408.
That's the ones we're gonna take out of order.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay.
Sorry, I missed it.
Rick has her number, he's gonna call her right now.
You wanna put her on speakerphone?
Yeah,
We can do that.
just get up.
I have her number too.
This is public service, that's its best.
We need music.
I could do that, but copyright.
That's right.
If she doesn't answer then.
Wow.
She's not picking up.
Go to agenda.
Is that the computer?
All right, I'm getting voicemail. Let me see if I have any other numbers for her.
Oh, here, just move on.
Okay, well, maybe
We've gone above and beyond at this
have we done our due diligence
Yeah.
here?
So,
Something we can all agree on.
We agree on most.
We do.
We do.
We agree on most things.
Yeah.
All right.
okay.
All right, so I'll make a,
I don't know if I'm allowed to ask a question. Are we still in the open?
We are.
we are still in public portion. I'm about to make a motion to close public portion, and you did
I did.
speak already.
So am I allowed to go again or no?
Typically, no. Is it short?
It, it'll, okay.
Is it short?
I'll make it short.
Come on.
Thank you.
Right.
You know, it's that time of year.
Thank you. Eileen McFarland. So things came up while I was listening to everybody. Do we have anybody from Hampton Bays on the, I don't know the name, the Green Energy Committee?
The Sustainability Committee? Who's the liaison to that?
John.
John
John,
is,
yeah.
he's not here. Do you know?
Right.
Just a yes or no.
Are you
is good
co-chair?
enough. I
You're
don't know.
co-liaison?
I'd have to go through the list.
Okay, I can find that out, I assume on the
It's
website.
probably on the
can-
website.
I'm gonna call you tomorrow anyway, so I'll let you know.
It
Oh,
lists,
thank you.
probably lists the members on the website.
Okay, that's one.
And we certainly would welcome people, you know, on it. If you want to be on it?
Not right now, thank you. Another question I have when they talked about the housing. It's my understanding that Hampton Bays is in beyond great need of a new sewage system. So my thought is, how can any new housing be put into place with the existing sewage system? I don't need an answer. It's just a thought that I have, that how can anything happen? I've seen new houses go up, and I keep saying, well, how can that happen if we don't have the sewage system that we need? So I would think you would need to take that into consideration before approving any new housing plan.
Right. There is no sewage system in Hampton Bays. It's all on
Correct.
septic, individual septic systems, and that's how it was done by design.
Correct, but it's my understanding that we
Right.
do want that to change.
Right, so typically if you do have like a complex going in, even like, you know, the Canoe Place Inn, you know, the boathouses are connected to a on-site sewage treatment facility.
Cluster system.
So that kind of thing, and we've been promoting these IA systems, giving grants for people to put those in that remove nitrogen. And we are trying to get a sewer district for Hampton Bays, you know, because it's the right thing for the environment and the economy as well, so.
Agreed, but
so-
in the meantime, new housing still.
Yeah, so the new houses that get built, all will have to put in IA systems, a new
Okay.
house
Thank you.
that removes nitrogen and, you know.
And the last question was, the people that developed the CAP.
What cap?
The
Climate action plan.
Oh,
Climate Action Plan. What qualifications did they have to develop that plan? Do-
If Janice is here, if you want to answer, you familiar with the company? So Janice, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to, I'll let you sit.
Thank you.
And our Town Planning and Development Administrator, Janice Shearer, can explain how we selected the company and why they were chosen.
Thank you.
Wait,
And
this
then-
is going to be quick.
Yeah, it's supposed to be quick.
That's a good question.
So Janice, you're gonna have to do this quickly so we can move along.
Ramble, we had an RFP process, request for proposals. We had a number of people reply. We looked at, we have a committee look at their previous work, their credentials, where they've, other work products, deliverables they've done, and we found Ramble to be the most qualified. They have offices around the world. They're located in New York City. They have a lot of environmental scientists. They have an extreme amount of qualified professionals who worked on this plan, and then you'll meet them on Thursday. They'll be attending via Zoom. And
Excellent. All right, I hope that answers your questions.
Doesn't, thank you.
Okay. So, I'll now make a motion to close public portion.
Second?
Seconded by Councilman Scavone. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we're going to move on to the agenda, and there has been some requests to take some things out of order. So, that was on page 31. And then the other one is on page
The next one.
page 34. So let me make a motion to take 1407 of 23 out of order, followed by 1408 of 23.
I'll second that.
So seconded by Councilman Scavone. Sorry, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So let's take 1407, 2023. And again, Janice Shearer, our Town Planning and Development Administrator, is here to help answer questions. We also have representatives of the NRP group. So this is 1407 is a resolution to adopt secret findings in connection with the NRP group zone change application entitled the Preserve at South Country Road in Quayock.
Second?
Seconded by Councilman Scavone. Janice, you want to provide any additional information?
Just that the project has changed through that secret process. So you may recall through the public hearing process that there was some concerns about the 104 units. It was reduced in size to 79 units that will be offered in the affordable lottery, and 1 unit reserved for a superintendent. In addition to that, there will be 4 acres of woodland that is preserved.
78 plus 1, not 79.
Oh, did I say 70?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, 78 plus 1, total of 79, excuse me. It's getting late. 25% open space, 4 acres, 25% conservation easements, also further open space, so a lot of, big chunk of the land will be preserved.
That was
They've
a result
reduced the
of
number of
public input.
buildings.
Excuse me.
Yes.
So you got
That was a
some
result
buffers.
of public input on that side
As
of
a
the
result of
property.
public input and site topography, going there, seeing it, understanding how it looks and feels, and the diversity of the woodlands and that could be preserved. So that equates to a reduction in density from 6 units to 6 units per acre to a little over 4, and you're still getting 79 total units, 78 for lottery. I think that's the high points of, they'll have independent sewage treatment. The nitrogen loading is 2.5 milligrams per liter, very low. And it's, I think, going to be a really nice project. So the findings
Any
are here
other
for your
questions?
adoption.
Well, so
And
this step we can't vote on the next one until we vote on this.
you can't approve the zone change until you approve the findings. So those findings are then published in the ENB bulletin, and then you would vote on the zoning change, and then they're free to go to site plan. Subdivision is not over yet. They still have to go through the planning board.
Right, exactly. Anybody have any questions? No. All right, thank you, Janice. All right, so we had a motion and a second. I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Approved unanimously. And we'll move on to 1408 of 2023. This is co-sponsored with Councilman Bouvier, who is not present. And I know John spent an awful lot of time involved with this application and going to the local civic associations and the CACs and listening and trying to work with the developer to try to address some of the community concerns. So I'm sorry that John is not here tonight. I believe he would have wanted to support this in its current configuration, but I can't speak for him. But So this is 1408 of 2023.
There's a small error, a scrivener's error on page 2. I'll show you exactly.
If it's a scrivener's error, I probably don't have to do a motion to amend, but
It says 16.2, but it should say 17.33, just describing the site and the legislative intent.
And I have the correction.
17 point what?
It should say 17.33.
You know what, so let's get this right. So let me make a motion to amend it to strike 16.2 as acres and make it 17.33.
Yes, in the
Second.
legislative intent portion of
All
the
right, in the
resolution.
legislative intent portion, seconded by Councilman Scavone, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so it now is amended. So now I will make a motion to approve 1408 of 2023. It's a notice of adoption of a change in zoning classification from CR 40 to multifamily planned residential district MFPRD for the application entitled The Preserve at South Country Road in order to facilitate development of 78 affordable housing lottery units at less than 6 units per acre and 1 superintendent unit with over 6 acres of open space, 38% in the hamlet of Quyock.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councilman Scavone. So, anyone on the motion? We've been working on this for a long time. I think it started out, what, at 180 units originally? And then it reduced several times, so we eventually agreed to consider it at 104 units.
We were at 95 for quite a while.
Yeah, we got down in, it's ending up at 78 affordable units plus 1 manager's apartment, correct?
Except that I've called you the NPR group the entire time.
NRP. So, and I, appreciate your willingness to listen to the community's concerns, to make modifications, but I also appreciate the community's willingness to do its part in trying to address the shortage of workforce housing in our area. It's not easy to arrive at these moments where we can approve something that's significant, and this is significant. This will be, 78 individuals or couples or families that now have a chance to live in the community where they work. So we are making a difference, and it took a long time. This has been years in the making, years. So I'm happy that we arrived. I'm just a little sad that my colleague, Councilman Bouvier, isn't here to be a part of this vote too. But I do believe at this number he supports it. So I wish I could add him to the vote, but I can't, and I'm not going to delay it to a point where he's here. So as long as we have the votes tonight, I'd like to move it forward. So is there anyone else?
Mm-hmm.
Councilman Scavone?
Housing is a crisis in the town. I think that's evident. A lot of young people showed up to these hearings saying, "I would like a place to live," and that was heard, at least by me. And something else that came about in the public hearings was that people in the West expressed a desire to have housing in the eastern part of the town, and that is something that we are taking into consideration with our future, our future initiatives for housing in Southampton town. So I just wanted that to be on the record and part of this hearing for this meeting.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
And we do have a number of proposals under current consideration east of the Shinnecock Canal, in excess, cumulatively, well in excess of the number of units at this facility. So, anyone else? Okay, I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, abstentions? It's unanimous of the 4 of us that are here, and it is approved. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And thank you to Janice for just an amazing, I don't know if it's a kind of term, but just an amazing,
Janice,
public
yes,
servant.
and Janice, I actually have a question for you. In terms of Suffolk County Planning Commission,
Yes, we had their report. They were in favor.
and they were
It
in
was
favor of it, so it would not require
approved.
supermajority,
Nope.
it's just a simple majority. Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you. All that's in the
All right.
record.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Get home
Safe
safely.
home.
All right, so we're We're gonna go to the top of the agenda, and Councilman Martell, you have the first resolution.
Okay, Town Board Resolution 1237 of 2023, amend the 2024 preliminary budget for Highway Department fee schedule. Tommy John, did you have a chance to talk to Superintendent McCardle on this?
I was looking for a definition of the term work done, and so I thought that was something that I said in the meeting, and I was hoping that something would come about, but it has not.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
I'm not prepared to vote on this.
Yeah, I'm going to withdraw it. I'll leave it for the next liaison.
Yeah, next board.
Yeah.
Yeah, it won't affect the budget, so.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it can be part of the fee schedule next year can be adjusted. Okay, so, it's being withdrawn by Councilman Martell, the sponsor. We'll move on to 1382 of 2023. This authorizes a grant application to New York State 2023 Transportation Alternatives Program, a TAP, for the Noyak Road pedestrian enhancements.
Second?
Seconded. Did you want to co-sponsor this? This
I
is
do.
your project. here.
Co-sponsor?
I'm not sure why I'm the lead
No.
sponsor, so we'll put Tommy John.
Supervisor, I guess.
Sandy, can we put Tommy John on?
I've got it.
All right, so, and seconded by Councilman Scavone, who's now co-sponsor. Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved. 1383 of 2023, co-sponsored with Councilwoman McNamara. Authorize supervisor to sign a contract with the Landro Andrews Engineering, PLLC, to provide structural engineering design services for Corwin Lane Boat Ramp, Mechanic Road Boat Ramp, and Mill Creek Boat Ramp.
Second?
Seconded by Councilwoman McNamara.
On the motion?
On the motion,
I'm looking
Councilman
at this particular resolution. I think it's important to note that this is a project that is being undertaken by our Southampton Town trustees. This is a bonding resolution, and bonding resolutions are passed by the Southampton Town Board. So that is something that has to be in place because of the fact that we are the municipal corporation. And it just, since we have one in front of us, and we've been talking considerably about the tax line for the trustees and, how we have to sort things out. This is one power that the town has that the trustees by law are that they cannot do legally in the state of New York. So I just wanted to take that opportunity to, and we see this quite a bit. I mean, there's a lot of things that the trustees are doing that the town board has to approve,
That we gladly work with them on.
and we
Yeah.
gladly, and looking forward to these boat ramps.
do we know who owns the boat ramps? Are they trustee owned or town
The
owned?
trustee, well, the one that I'm familiar with is trustee owned.
Okay, yeah, some maybe. Okay. All right, so we had a motion and a second, all in, yeah, it was just the bond, this isn't the bond resolution.
No.
This authorizes the entering into the contract,
Oh, right, we've already done the, okay.
because if it was a bond resolution, I
Just
would,
need to vote.
just a regular vote, just to clarify, because otherwise, when you said bond, it made me think I needed
It's not the
a
bond.
roll call.
We already bonded for this, and now you're signing the
No, I'm
contract.
signing the
Just need
contract.
to vote.
All right, so, is that motion
Okay, so the
second?
spirit of what I said, because we did bond, and now the supervisor has to sign the contract on behalf of the trustees, and I think that point is significant.
Right.
Okay.
All right, so motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Approved. We'll move on to 1384 of 23, is co-sponsored with Councilwoman McNamara, authorized supervisor to sign a contract with Robert H. Fox, doing business as sea-level mapping, to complete topographic hydrographic surface surveys for Corwin Lane Boat Ramp, Mechanic Road Boat Ramp, and Mill Creek Boat Ramp.
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman McNamara. Same thing, basically, same places, but these are for the surveys. All right, motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved. You
Town
wanna-
Board
yeah.
Resolution 1385 of 2023, sponsored by Councilman Bouvier and me. This is to authorize the supervisor to sign a real estate listing agreement with the sale of a buyer benefit unit located at 1102 Erie Way in East Quogue.
Second?
Seconded by Councilwoman McNamara, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, approved. Next one's mine, but Tommy John, you'll read all of John's, right?
Okay.
All right. So 1386 of 23, authorize supervisor to sign contract amendment with Historical Concepts for professional conceptual design and visioning services for the Hampton Bays Hamlet Center.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Schiavone. I know there was some comment on this at the public portion, but is there any discussion?
This is work we all asked them to do.
It is work we asked them to do, and we're trying to provide some visual aids to help the community analyze what they have been reflecting they'd like to see for their community, and see if we got it right or didn't get it right, and it's going to help to do that. So, okay, we had a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved. Tommy John?
Town Board Resolution 1387 of 2023 to authorize the supervisor to sign extension with Great Northern Fibers LLC for private or municipal markets for the disposal and recycling services for mixed paper and corrugated cardboard.
Second?
Seconded by Councilwoman McNamara. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approved. 1388 of 23, co-sponsored by Councilman Schiavone, authorizes the supervisor to execute 2024 fire protection contract with the Village of Quogue for the North End Quogue Fire Protection District.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Schiavone. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approved. 1389 of 23, co-sponsored again with Councilman Schiavone, authorize the supervisor to execute the 2024 fire protection contracts with the Village of Sag Harbor for the Bay Point and Noyak Fire Protection Districts.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Schiavone. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approved. 1390 of 2023, to authorize the supervisor to execute a 2024 support agreement for MRI Software LLC for the Town of Southampton Housing Authority for the administration of the Southampton Town Housing Authority Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program.
Second.
Seconded by who, Councilman Martell? They both sort of said second at the same time.
Mhm.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approved.
Town Board Resolution 1391 of 2023, co-sponsored by Supervisor Schneiderman, authorize the supervisor to execute a contract amendment with Edward Wolfersdorf to assist with the review of backlogged building permit plans in the Department of Land Management.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved. 1392-23, authorize the supervisor to execute a contract with Daniel R. Velasco, PEPC, as it relates to professional consulting services for the Fire Island Inlet to Montauk Point project, the FIM project.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Schiavone. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Approved.
Town Board Resolution 1393 of 2023, authorize the supervisor to sign a sole source contract with General Code LLC for services for the town clerk's office.
Second?
Seconded by Councilwoman McNamara. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approved. 1394 of 2023, co-sponsored with Councilman Schiavone, authorize the supervisor to sign contract amendments with Nelson Pope and Voorhees LLC in connection with the preparation of a supplemental general environmental impact statement for the proposed Riverside Sewage Treatment Plant, Hamlet of Riverside.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Schiavone. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approved.
Town Board Resolution 1395, 2023, co-sponsored with Councilwoman McNamara, recall and amend Resolution Number 2023-182, authorizing a contract extension for maintenance and installation repair of water mains with Roadwork Construction Corp.
Second?
Seconded by Councilwoman McNamara. All in favor?
Aye.
Approved.
Town Board Resolution 1396 of 2023, co-sponsored with Councilwoman McNamara, award and authorize the supervisor to sign a contract with Otis Ford for F-150 4x4 Super Crew.
Second?
Seconded by Councilwoman McNamara. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approved. 1397 of 23, authorize sanitary system repairs and tree removal at 240 West Montauk Highway, Hampton Bays, from the Town of Huntington contract with the Land Tech Group, Inc.
Second?
Seconded by Councilor Martell. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, approved. 1398 of 2023 accepts donation for Southampton Town Police Department.
Second, and can I co-sponsor it? son?
Seconded by Councilman Schiavone, who would like to co-sponsor. Just on the motion, this is a $10,000 donation. That's very, it's a significant donation toward public safety, to a police department from the Greek Orthodox Church. They hold their Blue Dream events each year, and this is not the first time that we're a recipient of a donation from that event. One year, we were the main recipients, but I just want to take this opportunity to thank the church, but in particular to thank Father Alex and Father Constantine, who are great community leaders and really take an interest in trying to keep people safe and trying to strengthen our community. So we really appreciate the donation. All right. So there's a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. 1399 of 2023 amends the 2023 budget for various departments. It's a housekeeping resolution.
Second?
Seconded by Councilman Schiavone. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, approved. Resolution 1400 of 2023, reallocate insurance recovery funds to waste management funds.
Second?
Seconded by Councilwoman McNamara. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, approved. 1401 of 2023 appoints Susan Cohen, Chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Second, and I'd like to
Seconded.
co-sponsor.
Seconded by Councilman Schiavone, who'd like to co-sponsor. Just on the motion, Susan Cohen has been, I think, acting in a vice chair capacity, but she's been a very effective member, and with the appointment of Adam Grossman to, was the chair to the court, there is no chair. And so hopefully the board will support naming Susan the chair. Just want to make sure we have sufficient votes. If not, I'll just put it off till the next meeting. But any other discussion? Is everybody okay? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Any opposed or abstentions? Okay. All right, it's approved. Congratulations to Susan. 1402 of 2023, notice of adoption, approved change in non-conforming use to allow sign company as special trade contractor 424 North Sea Road, North Sea.
Second?
Seconded by Councilwoman McNamara. Just on the motion, so we held a work session, and then we held a
Public
hearing on this, and I think we got comments back from planning and so the planning commission. I think it's like local determination from the planning commission. But this is the, there's a sign shop, used to be a lawnmower shop, so I'm sure you're all very familiar with it. There was some questions maybe about visibility. But this allows one non-conforming use to another. I mean, I think down the road, though, didn't we talk about maybe a zone change for this property to make it a commercially zoned thing that should be looked at? But
One next door neighbor came in and noted overnight parking. That was the only
right.
thing, and I hope that they listened to that neighbor.
They
But-
said they've been responsive when they
Good.
ask for things. So.
Good, good.
So, and you know,
I did drive past.
in doing this, we're making the determination that, you know, this is, although it's still a non-conforming use, less non-conforming than what had been approved for that location.
It really is a good candidate for zone change. It's been non-conforming since we've had zoning.
nobody could live there. It can't be residential.
know.
You know, I mean, that's the fundamental question. If you say it's zoned residential, is it an appropriate site for a house? The answer is no, absolutely not an appropriate site for a house. So it really should be then, not zoned residential. It should be zoned some form of commercial. But, for now, this solves the problem, and then maybe the next board can work on this. Maybe will entertain
I think they'd have to bring it forward.
yeah, somebody would have to bring it forward. The town on its own can do it too. All right, so we have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, approved. All right, 1403 of 2023, resolution adopting negative declaration for purposes of secret in connection with the North Sea Beach Colony Beach Erosion Control District.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Scavone. Any conversation? All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. 1404 of 2023, public interest order in the matter of the increase and improvement of the North Sea Beach Colony Beach Erosion Control District pursuant to Town Law 202B.
Second?
Seconded by Councilwoman McNamara, and this is just a necessary step for this, and then is there one more related to this? Maybe not. All right, so second by Councilman McNamara, call the vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, approved. All right, 1405 of 2023, recall and amend Town Board Resolution number 2023-1329, authorizing additional funds for process servers from One World Judicial Services, Inc.
Second?
I think the GL code was changed. All right, second by Councilman Martell, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
approved. 1406, retain law office of Carter, Ledyard, and Milborn LLP for the Fire Island Inlet to Montauk Point FIM project.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Scavone, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, approved. The next one we did already.
Next
Town
two.
Board Resolution 1409 of 2023,
Which two?
resolution authorizing the supervisor to execute documents necessary for construction of new highway department maintenance barn at 30 Club Lane, Bridgehampton, New York.
Second?
On the motion, 30 Club Lane is in Noyak.
Yeah, I agree with
I
that.
don't, I think that's, I think we know where it is.
Is there one in
It's on
Bridgehampton,
Wildwood
too?
Road.
There is a highway barn in Bridgehampton as well, but
On Corwith.
in Corwith, the 30 Club Lane is definitely Noyak.
Right, it's,
Do we want to, we could amend it, you want to just clean it up and just strike Bridgehampton, write Noyak? And it's not, there's a couple, twice it appears.
it doesn't change the resolution.
It's
Before we pass.
I see it in the title and I see it later on
The resolve.
in the resolve. Let's just clean it up so that it's,
It's across from the Noyak.
all right,
Golf Club.
so,
Everyone
all right,
Yeah,
so
I'd
Rick
like
is
to
making a
correspond.
motion to amend, to strike Bridgehampton and put in Noyak. I'll second, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Okay, Rick is making a motion to approve as amended. Who seconded?
I did.
Seconded by Councilwoman McNamara.
Who was
So
the
this-
second on the change?
I was.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I seconded, hold on.
Oh.
I seconded the motion to amend, and Cindy seconded the motion to approve the amended resolution.
Okay.
You got it?
Sorry. We
Oh.
made that more complicated than it needed
All
to
right,
be.
so,
Kim's got it.
and the amendment is basically wherever it says Bridgehampton, it will now say Noyak. All right, so call the vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, approved. 1410 of 2023 standard workday and reporting resolution for elected appointed officials.
Second?
Should say official,
Hmm.
so there's only one on it, that's okay. So we had a second by Councilman Scavone, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, approved. 1411 of 2023 appoints Frank Belson to custodial worker 1 position in municipal works.
Second?
Seconded by Councilwoman McNamara, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, approved, and congratulations to Frank. 1412 of 23 appoints Bruce Hubbard to Maintenance Mechanic 4 position in Parks and Recreation.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Martell. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approved, and congratulations to Bruce. 1413 of 23 appoints Matthew Crops to Maintenance Mechanic 4 position in Parks and Recreation. Seconded by Councilman Martell. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approved, and congratulations to Matthew. 1414 of 23 appoints Thomas McCaffrey to Maintenance Mechanic 3 position in Parks and Recreation. Seconded by Councilman Martell. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approved, and congratulations to Thomas. All right. 1415 of 2023, attend drug recognition expert interviews.
Second, I'd like to co-sponsor.
So seconded by Councilman Scavone, and we're adding Councilman Scavone as a co-sponsor. This is, I guess, 2 of his police officers interviewed for this training,
It's huge.
authorizing
It's
them
amazing.
to interview for Governor's Traffic Safety Committee's drug recognition expert training. So, it's really important, particularly with the state legalizing recreational cannabis, that that we have people who can, have that kind of training to make that determination. With DWI, it's, it's easier. You have breathalyzers. It's more challenging with other drugs, with other substances that this will give them the training. So, all right, so we had a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, approved. All right, moving on to 1416 of 2023. It ratifies stipulation of settlement with CSEA.
Second?
All right, seconded by Councilwoman McNamara. All right, any discussion? Call the vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, approved. 1417 terminates an employee in the Controller's Office.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Scavone. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, approved. 1418, 2023 terminates an employee in Municipal Works Department.
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman McNamara. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, approved.
Town Board Resolution 1419 of 2023, notice of public hearing to consider the adoption of the Community Housing Fund Project Plan.
Second?
And this is John's resolution. Tommy John is actually the co-sponsor on this. Seconded by
Thank you.
Councilwoman McNamara. And
Can I just, on the motion, there's no, I understand it's during the holiday season, and there's nothing saying we can't hold this open.
right,
It's not saying we're opening it and closing it and voting it on that day, so I
Right.
understand it's a busy time of
and
year.
it will be hybrid too. People can both in person as well as video conferencing. It's 1 p.m. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, approved.
Town Board Resolution 1420 of 2023, notice of public hearing to amend Town Code Chapter 330-5 definitions and 330-10 Table of Use Regulations to restrict the operation of commercial vessels in residential zones.
Second, and I'd actually like to be added as a co-sponsor if I could.
All right, and this would be a hearing, what day? Oh, on the 21st.
Yeah.
Thursday, December 21st, 1 p.m. Councilwoman McNamara is seconding and would like to be added as a co-sponsor. And we did have like a work session on
We did.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were some of these residential mariners that were engaged in these commercial the party boat kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
And we're clarifying the code.
so, all right, so we have motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Tommy John?
Town Board Resolution 1421 of 2023, road review application for John Ferguson, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 900-208.00-02.0. 14.002, Situate Hampton Bays is accepted.
Second?
Seconded by Councilor McNamara. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, approved.
Town Board Resolution 1422 of 2023, road review application for Red Cedar Capital LLC, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 19-31-2-26, situated in North Sea, is accepted.
Second?
Seconded by Councilor McNamara. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, approved.
Town Board Resolution 1423 of 2023, road review application for Starter Holdings Corp. Suffolk County Tax Map Number 19-376-1-43.2, Situate, West Hampton, is accepted.
Second?
Seconded by Councilor McNamara. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved.
Town Board Resolution 1424 of 2023. These past resolutions were sponsored by Councilman Bouvier, and so is this one. Road review application for Take Two Capital LP, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 900-382-1-4.6, Situate at West Hampton, is accepted.
Second?
Seconded by Councilor McNamara. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
And now I
approved.
know why John says the tax map number as indicated in the resolution.
Yeah, he used to read them all the time. And then I would make him repeat it just to be obnoxious.
Wait.
All right, 44910, this is on the walk-ons. 44910 authorizes the supervisor to execute a no-cost extension of term of contract, not term of office, term of contract for the Riverside Sewer District Professional Services Agreement with Leonard Marchese, MBA CPA.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Scavone. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, approved. 44913, notice of public hearing to consider amending Town Code Section 330-84 height to allow additional height for new dwellings with gabled roofs located in flood zones. So I'll explain this. Let's get a second so we can debate it.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Scavone. So, this is something that probably should have been done a very long time ago. When you're building a house in these flood zones, you have to elevate the house to meet the flood zone, and then you have to meet a certain height. And you can't have a basement, so you're not allowed to have a basement, so your mechanicals typically go above. What we're finding is that because of the height limitation, people are choosing to sort of maximize the views and things like that. These are often in, scenic areas, and so they're building just modern houses, because if you build a modern house, you have flat roof, and so nobody's building traditional gabled roofs because you're punished basically by that, whatever that height is. So, East Hampton Code gives you an extra 7 feet of relief if you do a gable. But Southampton doesn't give any relief if you do a gable. So I didn't want to do 7 feet, but I do sort of want to encourage traditional architecture and not force everybody to do these boxy houses. Some of them are beautiful, but if it's just for a traditional roof line, this would give an additional 3 feet. So I wanted to bring it to a hearing. I've been working with Katie on this and with Jim somewhat as well. So this would just set the public hearing.
Are a
And
lot of these also ending up before the ZBA?
yeah, that's what's happening. They're
Yeah.
all going into the ZBA. The ZBA's been granting the height.
But that's what I
No.
said, we need to look at a lot of these things that are being granted and they're almost as of right and get them out of the queue because it's backlogging
It's
everything.
backlogging. This is one of those examples, I believe, where you just can't build a traditional house in a flood zone because of that height restriction.
And this only gives that,
To a traditional gable.
okay.
It has to be a traditional gable, has to meet certain slopes and design aspects. So, and this would
12 over
allow for
12.
public hearing. All right, so, and the hearing on this would be,
The
21st.
on the 21st. All
Lots
right.
of stuff on the phone.
All right, so, there's motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Approved. The next one, 44915, designate the town planning and development administrator to sign Central Pine Barrens Commission hardship exemption application.
Second.
Let me just find it here. This is for the Riverside Sewage Treatment Plant. It should really, that's actually part of the title. It's just not listed on it. Those words got cut off. It's for the Riverside Sewage Treatment Plant. All right, so seconded by, I'm sorry, Councilman Scavone?
Councilman Scavone, could I co-sponsor?
All right.
While we're at it, thank you.
Did you co-sponsor?
Mhm.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Was it toward the end of the meeting?
All right, 44920, authorize town attorney to enter into a stipulation of settlement to settle all litigation with Build the Farm LLC, but not really, no comment on the name. Building the Farm LLC.
Second.
And Jim, I guess
Yeah.
this will be in your hands,
Yes.
and this relates to
Specifically just that.
workforce housing related.
Yeah, well, specifically this particular piece of property that's actually now within the village of Sagaponic, it's a farm, it's a working farm, and it has a. and there's
Oh,
a
right, so
proposal-
we're turning over to the village the
Right.
right to enforce the easement that's in place.
Essentially, yeah. Only on this particular situation and pursuant to the language that's in the stipulation itself. So it's very particular to just this one situation, this one property. And they still have to go before the village of Sagaponic for approval for the farm housing. So
Yeah, the
they still have to
farm
have
labor
that
housing.
approval for it.
All right, any discussion on this? All right, we had a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 44922, it's warrant number 22. Need a second?
Second.
It's all three of you. All right, seconded by Councilman Scavone, all in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, John's usually my second on this. So that, yeah, that was the warrant and the CPF and capital and payroll. All right, so that was approved. I did call that one, right? Did I call, okay, I called the vote on 44922. It was unanimous. Okay, 44923, authorize the supervisor to execute an intermunicipal agreement with the County of Suffolk as it relates to the use of American Rescue Act ARPA funds in furtherance of the Riverside Sewer District.
Second, and I'd like to co-sponsor.
Okay, so seconded by Councilman Scavone, who's co-sponsoring, and this is that $5 million that we're getting from Suffolk
Did
County.
you put the big check in your office?
I think it probably is in there. I think it is in my office. All right, so, motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, approved. 44925, co-sponsored by Councilman Scavone, authorizes the supervisor to sign an intermunicipal emergency services agreement for police tactical team cooperation with the villages of Quogue, West Hampton Beach, and Southampton.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Scavone, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, approved.
44926, authorize the supervisor to execute necessary documents relating to Highway Department structures at 1524 North Sea Road, Highway Yard, and 116 Old Riverhead Road, Highway Yard.
Second?
These like building permits and things like that, right?
Mhm.
All right, seconded by Councilwoman McNamara. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, approved. And lastly, 44928, ratifies stipulation of settlement with the PBA in this case.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Scavone. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, approved.
Councilman Scavone, can you please make sure that that community housing plan is posted on our website?
Okay, so.
I will.
So we've reached the
Prior to
end
that.
of our
Thank you.
agenda. I'd like to ask if there's any other business. Okay, hearing none, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman McNamara. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We are adjourned. Everybody get home safely.